The Jedi teach that it has a will, a balance between light and darkness that must be maintained. The Sith know it as a tool for domination, power without limit for those bold enough to seize it. But what happens when something tears through the fabric of reality? Something that answers to neither the light nor the dark, but to a far older, more primal law. What happens when vengeance itself takes physical form and rides into a galaxy that has never known true judgment? On the industrial world of Lothal, in a forgotten Imperial research facility buried beneath the planet's western wastes, Inquisitor Seventh Sister completed the final sigil of an ancient ritual. The chamber reeked of ozone and dark side energy, walls covered in Sith runes she'd excavated from a forbidden holocron. Her orders were simple: open a doorway to the dark dimensions the ancient Sith had once accessed, retrieve knowledge that even Vader didn't possess, and prove herself worthy of greater power. The ritual worked, just not the way she intended. Reality screamed. The air didn't just tear, it burned. Crimson lightning crackled through a wound in space itself, and through that wound came fire. Not the red or blue of lightsaber plasma, not the purple of Force lightning. This was Hellfire, orange and black and hungry, flames that moved with terrible purpose. The temperature in the chamber should have incinerated everything. Instead, the fire burned cold against the skin while searing something deeper, something in the soul itself. Seventh Sister stumbled backward, her twin lightsabers igniting on instinct. Through the dimensional rift came a sound that made her blood freeze, the roar of an engine that shouldn't exist, a mechanical scream mixed with something organic and furious. Then he emerged. The hell cycle tore through reality, riding flames that left scorch marks in the air itself. Chrome and bone, steel and hellfire, a motorcycle that defied every law of physics the Empire's scientists understood. And astride it sat something that made the Inquisitor question everything she'd been taught about the dark side. A skeleton wreathed in fire. No, not just fire. Hellfire that burned from within the bones themselves, flickering through eye sockets that held no eyes yet saw everything. Black leather jacket that somehow wasn't consumed by the flames. Chains wrapped around skeletal hands that gripped handlebars made of something between metal and nightmare. The skull turned toward her, and she felt its gaze like a physical weight pressing against her chest. Ghost Rider had arrived in the Star Wars galaxy. The spirit of vengeance, Zarathos, stirred within the burning skull. This place was wrong. The energy here, this force permeating everything, it wasn't magic, wasn't hell-spawned. It was something else entirely, a cosmic force that touched every living thing. Strange, new, but irrelevant, because beneath that energy, Zarathos sensed something achingly familiar. Guilt. Rivers of it. Oceans of suffering, pain inflicted, innocent blood spilled. This galaxy was drowning in the sins of countless billions. And where there was sin, there would be judgment. What are you? Seventh Sister's voice cracked despite her training. She'd faced Jedi, slaughtered Padawans, tortured rebels. Nothing had ever made her feel like prey before. Ghost Rider's skull tilted, hellfire dancing between exposed teeth. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere and nowhere. A chorus of the damned and the judged, echoing with authority that predated this galaxy's existence. Vengeance. The Hell Cycle's engine roared, and Seventh Sister did something she'd never done in 5 years serving the Empire. She ran. Ghost Rider didn't pursue immediately. The spirit of vengeance took a moment to feel this new reality. The dimensional rift sealed behind him with a thunderclap that shook the facility's foundations. No going back. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. But that didn't matter. Zarathos existed to punish the guilty, and this galaxy, this vast, war-torn galaxy, would provide an eternity of work. The rider's skull turned, Hellfire eyes tracking Seventh Sister's force-enhanced sprint through the facility corridors. She'd killed, tortured, hunted the innocent. Her sins burned bright in the spiritual realm, a beacon calling for judgment. The Hell Cycle surged forward. Imperial research stations weren't designed for high-speed pursuits. Seventh Sister crashed through a blast door using the Force, metal shrieking as it bent to her will. Behind her, she heard that engine, that impossible, terrible engine, growing louder. She risked a glance back. Ghost Rider rode up the wall, defying gravity, Hellfire trail burning through reinforced durasteel like it was paper. The chain in his right hand spun out with supernatural precision, wrapping around support columns and tearing them free. The ceiling began to collapse. Seventh Sister leapt through the destruction, using force-enhanced acrobatics. But the rider simply rode through it, Hell Cycle smashing through falling debris that should have crushed anything made of bone and metal. Flames exploded outward with each impact, consuming the wreckage. She burst into the facility's main hangar, where her TIE Advanced waited. Stormtroopers stationed there turned in confusion, blasters rising. "Seal the..." she started to shout. Ghost Rider exploded through the hangar entrance, Hell Cycle catching air that shouldn't exist, landing in a spray of hellfire that sent troopers diving for cover. The rider's left hand swung the chain in a wide arc. Hellfire links wrapped around 3 stormtroopers, and they screamed, not from burning flesh, but from something deeper. The flames judged them, found them wanting, and they collapsed unconscious, their souls scorched by guilt for atrocities committed under Imperial orders. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Seventh Sister ignited both lightsabers, purple blades humming. "I am an Inquisitor of the Galactic Empire. I serve Lord Vader himself." She thrust both hands forward, unleashing a torrent of Force lightning. The electricity struck Ghost Rider square in the chest. Blue-white energy crackled across burning bone, earthed through the Hell Cycle's frame. The rider didn't even slow down. Lightning and hellfire mixed in a display that defied the facility's laws of physics, sparks cascading across the hangar floor. Your power means nothing to the spirit of vengeance. Seventh Sister's confidence shattered. She turned and ran for her TIE fighter, using the Force to yank open the cockpit hatch before she'd even reached it. If she could just get airborne, reach orbit, contact Lord Vader. The chain wrapped around her ankle. Hellfire burned through her boot instantly, but didn't consume flesh. Instead, it seared her presence in the Force, and she felt Zarathos pulling her backward with strength that made her Force enhancement seem like a child pulling against a mountain. She hit the hangar floor hard, lightsabers skittering away. Ghost Rider dismounted the Hell Cycle, boots striking durasteel with the weight of eternal judgment. He walked toward her slowly, deliberately, hellfire trailing from every step. The surviving stormtroopers didn't move, couldn't move. Some primal instinct deeper than training told them that interfering would mean damnation. Seventh Sister scrambled backward, reaching for the Force to push him away. The invisible energy struck Ghost Rider's chest and slid off, unable to find purchase against something that existed partially outside this reality. The spirit of vengeance crouched before her, skull inches from her face, and she saw her reflection in those burning eye sockets. "Look into my eyes," Ghost Rider commanded, and even the Force itself seemed to recoil from what was about to happen. "Your soul is stained by the blood of the innocent. Feel their pain." The penance stare struck like a supernova, directly into Seventh Sister's mind. Every Jedi youngling she'd murdered, every rebel she'd tortured for information, every innocent bystander killed in her pursuit of fugitives. Every moment of suffering she'd caused cascaded through her consciousness, and she experienced it all simultaneously, not as the inflictor, but as the victim. She felt the lightsaber pierce her own chest, felt her own force lightning cooking her from within, felt the terror of children watching their masters die, felt everything. Seventh Sister's scream echoed through the hangar, a sound of absolute soul-destroying horror that made the Stormtroopers press hands against their helmets. It lasted 5 seconds. 5 seconds that contained years of agony. When Ghost Rider released her, she collapsed, catatonic, eyes staring at nothing. Alive but broken in ways Bacta could never heal. The rider stood, Hellfire dimming slightly as he surveyed the hangar. The remaining Imperials stared at him in absolute terror. He could sense their guilt too. Crimes committed, orders followed that shouldn't have been. But they were small fish. Foot soldiers. The ones who gave the orders, who orchestrated genocide and oppression, who built weapons to destroy entire planets. Those were the souls Zarathus hungered for. Ghost Rider returned to the Hell Cycle, the engine growling to life with a sound like damned souls singing. He rode toward the hangar's main exit, and the blast doors, sealed, magnetically locked, reinforced, simply melted away before hellfire that answered to no authority, but vengeance itself. Outside, Lothal's wind carried the scent of industrial waste and Imperial oppression. In the distance, factories belched smoke, while TIE fighters patrolled skies that had once belonged to free people. Ghost Rider's skull turned toward the capital city, where Imperial banners flew and stormtroopers enforced the Emperor's will. So many guilty. So many who had blood on their hands. The spirit of vengeance had found its new hunting ground. The Hell Cycle roared across the wastes, leaving a trail of hellfire that would burn for hours. A warning and a promise. Ghost Rider had invaded the Star Wars galaxy, and neither the Empire's might nor the Force's power would stop judgment from riding on wheels of fire and bone. In the hangar behind him, the surviving stormtroopers slowly approached Seventh Sister's broken form. One checked her pulse, still alive technically, but her eyes remained vacant, lost in an endless loop of experiencing her own atrocities. One trooper, designation TK-7291, removed his helmet with shaking hands. He'd served for 3 years, followed orders, shot civilians in Lothal City when they'd rioted against Imperial occupation. He'd told himself it was necessary, that the Empire brought order. Now, staring at what that burning skeleton had done to an Inquisitor, someone who commanded the Force itself, he wondered if one day those hellfire eyes would turn his way. And deep down, beneath layers of conditioning and propaganda, TK-7291 knew he deserved it, News of the incident spread through Imperial channels with the urgency reserved for rebel attacks and system-wide insurgencies. Within 6 hours, encrypted reports reached every garrison on Lothal. Within 12, they reached the sector command on Gorel. Within 18, a heavily redacted version landed on the desk of Grand Moff Tarkin himself, who read it twice before forwarding it directly to the Emperor's throne world of Coruscant with a single notation: requires inquisitorious attention. Within 24 hours, the report reached Darth Vader. The Dark Lord of the Sith stood in the meditation chamber of his personal Star Destroyer, the Executor, suspended in orbit above Mustafar. Through the Force, he'd already sensed the disturbance, a wrongness that rippled through the cosmic energy like a stone thrown into still water. Not the light side, not the dark, something other. Something that made even his connection to the Force feel strangely muted in its presence. Lord Vader, the hologram of Admiral Kendall Ozzel, flickered before him. We've received confirmation from Lothal. Inquisitor Seventh Sister has been incapacitated. Medical teams report severe psychological trauma consistent with exposure to unknown Force techniques. She remains catatonic. "Show me the security footage," Vader commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying the grainy recording from the research facility's hangar. Even through the poor quality feed, the image was unmistakable. A burning skeleton riding a vehicle that defied Imperial understanding, moving with purpose and terrible power. Vader watched as the entity, this thing, shrugged off Force lightning like rain. Watched as it ignored the Inquisitor's telekinetic attacks. Watched as it crouched before Seventh Sister and did something that left one of his most capable hunters a hollow shell. "Enhance the final sequence," Vader ordered. The technicians complied. The image zoomed on Ghost Rider's burning skull, capturing the moment the penance stare struck. Even through the recording, Vader felt an echo of something profound, a technique that bypassed the Force entirely, striking directly at consciousness itself. Guilt weaponized, suffering turned back upon its source. Fascinating and dangerous. "Admiral, quarantine Lothal. No ships in or out without my express authorization. Deploy the 3rd and 7th Legions to the capital. If this entity appears, they are to observe and report. Not engage. Is that understood?" "Yes, my lord." "And the Inquisitorius?" Vader's respirator cycled, the mechanical breathing filling the silence. "I will handle them personally. Send word to 5th Brother and 8th Brother. They are to rendezvous with me at Lothal within the standard day. And Admiral?" "My lord?" "Have your science division analyze every frame of that recording. I want to know what we're dealing with." The hologram flickered out. Vader turned back to the meditation chamber's viewport, staring at Mustafar's volcanic surface below. How many had died on this world? How many innocents had burned in lava rivers while he'd hunted surviving Jedi? How much suffering had he personally inflicted in service to the Emperor? If this entity truly possessed the ability to weaponize guilt, to make the guilty experience their victim's pain. Vader's respirator quickened slightly, the closest his damaged body could come to expressing concern. He was Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, enforcer of the Emperor's will. He had killed thousands, destroyed the Jedi Temple, hunted his former brothers and sisters, enabled a regime that had enslaved entire systems. If this burning specter came for him, what would it see? But Vader was Sith. He'd long since buried Anakin Skywalker's weakness, his attachment, his guilt. The dark side had freed him from such limitations, or so he told himself in the darkness of his meditation chamber, where old memories sometimes surfaced like bodies from beneath ice. He pushed the thought aside. Whatever this entity was, it would kneel before the power of the dark side, or it would be destroyed. There was no third option. Meanwhile, on Lothal's surface, Ghost Rider had discovered that hunting in a galaxy of trillions presented unique challenges. The Hell Cycle idled on a cliff overlooking Lothal's capital city. Capital City. The Empire's lack of imagination extended even to naming conventions. Below, the sprawl of industrial zones and Imperial architecture stretched for kilometers, all sharp angles and oppressive gray. Stormtroopers patrolled in squads of 4. TIE fighters screamed overhead in endless patterns. And everywhere, the guilty walked freely. Their crimes shielded by uniforms and ranks and the cold machinery of authoritarian rule. Johnny Blaze, the human consciousness sharing space with Zarathos, tried to assert some control. We can't just ride into a city and start torching everyone who's done wrong. There's got to be millions of people down there. They are guilty, Zarathos responded. The spirit of vengeance's voice echoing through their shared mind. They wear the uniforms of oppression. They enforce tyranny. They deserve judgment. Some of them might not have a choice. Conscription, propaganda, fear, excuses. The guilty always make excuses. Johnny had been bonding with Zarathos long enough to know how to negotiate with the demon. Fine, but we prioritize, The ones giving orders. The ones pulling triggers on civilians. The ones who enjoy it. We're not the Empire. We don't do mass punishment. The spirit of vengeance considered this, hellfire flickering in their shared skull as ancient intelligence weighed mortal wisdom. Very well. We hunt the architects of suffering first. Then we descend to their soldiers. A compromise, the best Johnny could hope for. Ghost Rider's attention was drawn by movement in the city below. A convoy of Imperial transports rolling through the streets, civilian crowds parting before them. But these weren't supply vehicles. Through senses that transcended normal vision, the rider perceived something else. Fear. The transports carried prisoners, and their terror radiated like heat from a forge. The Hell Cycle's engine growled. Johnny focused their supernatural sight, pushing past the metal walls of the transports. Inside, he saw them. Twi'leks, humans. A few species he didn't recognize, all shackled and bound. Some were injured. One Twi'lek child clutched her mother, both wearing the haunted expressions of people who knew death was coming. "What are they guilty of?" Johnny demanded. "Nothing," Zarathos admitted. And for once, the spirit's rage aligned perfectly with the human host's sense of justice. They are victims. The ones transporting them, they are guilty. The Hell Cycle launched off the cliff. Gravity meant nothing to a vehicle forged in Hell's deepest pits. The motorcycle fell toward the city, but fell with purpose, Hellfire trailing behind like a comet's tail. Imperial sensors registered the anomaly immediately. Unidentified craft, no transponder, descending at terminal velocity toward the prisoner convoy. TIE fighters vectored to intercept. Ghost Rider landed in the street 50 meters ahead of the convoy. Hell Cycle's impact cratering the Duracrete and sending a shockwave of hellfire expanding outward. Civilians screamed and scattered. The convoy's lead driver slammed on the brakes, repulsor lifts whining as the transport skidded to a halt. Stormtroopers poured from escort vehicles, blasters raised. "Halt! Identify yourself, or we will open fire!" Ghost Rider's skull turned toward them, and even through their helmets, the troopers felt that gaze like a physical weight. "You transport the innocent to their deaths," the rider's voice boomed, echoing off building facades. "Your judgment is at hand." The stormtroopers opened fire. Blaster bolts, superheated plasma that could punch through durasteel, struck Ghost Rider's skeletal frame and simply stopped, suspended in the air around him for a heartbeat before the hellfire consumed them, turning red plasma into orange flame that fed back into the rider's power. More bolts came, a sustained barrage from 24 troopers, and every shot only made the flames burn brighter. "Your weapons are useless," Ghost Rider stated, swinging his chain in a wide arc. Hellfire links extended impossibly, wrapping around blasters and yanking them from armored hands. The weapons melted, plasteel and tabana gas igniting in small explosions that sent troopers stumbling backward. 2 TIE fighters screamed overhead, laser cannons tracking. They opened fire, green bolts stitching a path toward the rider. Johnny's consciousness registered the threat, but Zarathos was faster. Ghost Rider thrust one skeletal hand skyward, and hellfire erupted in a column that caught both TIE fighters mid-strafe. The Imperial craft didn't explode. They simply burned, pilots screaming as supernatural flame ignored shields and hull, plating to consume the souls inside. The fighters spun out of control, crashing into empty buildings in twin fireballs. The stormtroopers stared in horror. Their training covered rebel ambushes, Jedi attacks, even pirate raids. Nothing in the manual addressed burning skeletons that ignored blaster fire and pulled TIE fighters from the sky with hellfire. "Fall back," the squad leader shouted. "Regroup it." Ghost Rider was already moving. The Hell Cycle surged forward, and the rider leapt from the seat mid-acceleration, skeletal boots striking the convoy's hood with enough force to cave in the reinforced front end. The driver inside scrambled for his sidearm, but Ghost Rider punched through the viewport, grabbed him by his uniform collar, and dragged him out through shattered transparasteel. "You knew what cargo you carried," the rider growled, holding the driver suspended at eye level. "You knew where they were going." I was following orders," the driver stammered, his face inches from hellfire that burned with ancient fury. "The labor camps, they're just labor camps. We don't—" "Lies." Ghost Rider's eyes flared, and the driver experienced something no Imperial propaganda had prepared him for: truth. Through the penance stare's power, he saw what happened in those labor camps. Saw the mass graves, saw the executions, saw children worked to death in mines, saw everything his willful ignorance had allowed him to deny. When the rider dropped him, the driver collapsed, weeping uncontrollably, his mind unable to escape the loop of horrors he'd helped facilitate. The other transports tried to flee, but Ghost Rider's chain lashed out with supernatural accuracy, wrapping around axles and dragging them to a halt. Stormtroopers, still conscious enough to fight, opened fire again, and again their shots proved useless. The rider moved through their formation like wildfire through dry grass, chain spinning, hellfire consuming weapons and armor, and forcing each trooper to confront the question: "What have I done?" Not all of them broke. Some had committed only minor infractions, following questionable orders, looking the other way once or twice. The rider's judgment was measured, even in fury. Those with lesser sins received lesser burns, falling unconscious but not destroyed. But the ones who'd enjoyed their work, who'd beaten prisoners or shot fleeing civilians, those fell catatonic, just like Seventh Sister. Within 3 minutes, the entire convoy was neutralized. Ghost Rider approached the prisoner transports, tearing the locked doors from their hinges with bare skeletal hands. Inside, the captives pressed against the far walls, terror replacing their earlier fear of Imperial execution. Johnny forced his consciousness forward, dampening Zarathos's hellfire enough that the flames receded from visible bone. His voice, when it emerged, carried less of the demonic chorus and more human compassion. "You're free," he said simply. "Go, run, find your families. The Empire will not take you today." The Twi'lek mother, clutching her daughter, stared at him, then at the unconscious stormtroopers, then back at Ghost Rider's burning skull. What are you?" "Justice," Ghost Rider answered. And this time it was both Johnny and Zarathos speaking in unison. "Tell your people, those who prey on the innocent will burn." The prisoners fled, disappearing into capital city's alleys and side streets. By the time Imperial reinforcements arrived, they'd vanished into the population, protected by civilians who'd witnessed a burning spirit strike down their oppressors without harming a single innocent. Ghost Rider stood alone in the street, surrounded by unconscious or catatonic Imperials, burning vehicles, and the smoldering wreckage of TIE fighters. In the distance, sirens wailed. More stormtroopers were coming. Perhaps soon, more of those force-wielding inquisitors. Let them come. The spirit of vengeance had found its purpose in this galaxy, and there were so many more guilty souls to judge. The hell cycle roared to life, and Ghost Rider disappeared into Lothal's industrial maze, leaving behind only flames, terror, and the beginning of a legend that would spread across the outer rim. The burning ghost who hunted the wicked, who could not be stopped, who brought judgment without mercy. The Empire had ruled through fear for years. Now fear had found a new face, and it wore a skull wreathed in hellfire. The Inquisitorius arrived on Lothal with the cold efficiency that had made them the Empire's most feared Jedi hunters. 2 of them descended from a modified TIE Advanced, black capes billowing in the wind as their boots struck the landing platform of the Imperial complex. Fifth brother, a hulking Dewutin with gray skin and a permanent scowl, ignited his spinning lightsaber with practiced menace. Beside him, eighth brother adjusted his own double-bladed weapon, the Torellian Django Jumper's yellow eyes scanning the facility with predatory focus. And behind them, his presence a dark pressure that made even battle-hardened stormtroopers unconsciously step back, came Darth Vader. "Report," Vader commanded, his respirator cutting through the tense silence. The garrison commander, Colonel Yendrik, stepped forward with a datapad. His hands shook slightly, not from cowardice, but from 3 sleepless nights dealing with the aftermath of Ghost Rider's rampage. "My lord, the entity has struck 7 times in 4 days. Prisoner convoys, execution details, interrogation facilities. 17 stormtroopers dead, 43 catatonic, and 12 officers in similar psychological collapse. Medical analysis suggests..." "I read the reports, Colonel." Vader's mask turned toward the city below, where smoke still rose from Ghost Rider's most recent attack. An Imperial recruitment center that had been conscripting teenagers at gunpoint. "What I require is actionable intelligence. Where will it strike next?" We don't know, my lord. There's no pattern we can identify. Sometimes it attacks at night, sometimes in broad daylight. It appears without warning, strikes, and vanishes before heavy reinforcements arrive. Our sensors detect nothing until it's already engaged. Yendrik swallowed hard. "It's like fighting a ghost." Eighth brother hissed through sharp teeth. "Impossible. Nothing evades the Force entirely. If this entity possesses such power, we would sense its presence." "Yet you do not," Vader observed, the statement carrying weight beyond mere fact. He'd been reaching out through the Force since arriving on Lothal, searching for this anomaly. What he found disturbed him more than any rebel attack. There was something, a void, not void, a presence that registered as wrongness rather than power, like trying to sense a hole in reality itself. The Force flowed around it rather than through it. Fifth brother growled deep in his chest. "Let it come. We've killed Jedi Masters and broken rebel cells. One burning corpse won't..." "Do not underestimate it." Vader cut him off with the sharp authority that had silenced admirals and generals. It incapacitated Seventh Sister in seconds. She was skilled, trained, dangerous. Whatever this entity is, it operates outside our understanding of the Force. That makes it unpredictable. Unpredictability kills. The words hung in the air, a rare admission of caution from the Dark Lord himself. Fifth brother and eighth brother exchanged glances, but said nothing. When Vader advised caution, even the proudest Inquisitor listened. However, Vader continued, turning back to Colonel Yendrik. It has shown a pattern in target selection. It strikes at those who harm innocents, those who commit atrocities in the Empire's name. His mask fixed on the colonel with uncomfortable intensity. Assemble a detail of your most enthusiastic interrogators, the ones who enjoy their work. Have them process a group of rebel suspects in the central plaza. Make it public. Yendrik paled. "My lord, you're suggesting we use our own men as bait?" "I am ordering it, Colonel." "Or do you question my methods?" "No, my lord. It will be done immediately." As Yendrik hurried away, shouting orders into his comlink, eighth brother stepped closer to Vader. "You believe it will take the bait?" "It has demonstrated a compulsion toward protecting the innocent and punishing the guilty," Vader replied, his gaze still on the city. "We will provide it with both, and when it arrives, we will be ready." Fifth brother ignited his lightsaber again, the red blade spinning in an arc that hummed through the air. "It won't survive contact with true dark side power, my lord. Whatever tricks it used on Seventh Sister won't work on us." Vader said nothing. but privately, he wondered. He'd felt Seventh Sister's terror through the Force in her final conscious moments. Pure, absolute, soul-destroying fear, unlike anything he'd encountered outside his own worst memories. This entity didn't just attack, it judged. And judgment required understanding the crimes committed. What would it see when it looked at Darth Vader? Would it see the enforcer of Imperial law? Or would it see Anakin Skywalker, child killer, Jedi slayer, the man who'd choked his pregnant wife in a fit of rage? The dark side had always taught that such guilt was weakness, chains to be broken through the embrace of passion and power. But standing on Lothal, watching smoke rise from the city, Vader felt something he'd buried for years, a cold certainty that some crimes couldn't be escaped through philosophy or strength, only through payment. He pushed the thought away with the iron discipline of decades. He was Sith. Guilt was beneath him. Whatever this entity brought, he would face it without fear, without hesitation, and he would destroy it as he destroyed every other threat to the Empire. The respirator cycled steadily, mechanical breathing hiding the turmoil beneath. Ghost Rider sensed the trap before Johnny's human consciousness fully understood it. The Hell Cycle idled in an alley 3 blocks from Lothal's central plaza, hidden in shadows that seemed deeper than normal physics allowed. Through walls and distance, Zarathos perceived the gathering. Stormtroopers forming a perimeter, officers in the distinctive gray uniforms of Imperial intelligence, and in the center, bound, beaten, terrified, 6 prisoners wearing the ragged clothes of rebel sympathizers. A lure, Zarathos observed in their shared mind. They expect us. Look at those prisoners, Johnny thought back, his consciousness focused on the 6 figures. Through supernatural sight, he saw their souls. 2 were guilty of minor infractions, property damage during protests, but 4 were genuinely innocent. A teacher who'd spoken against Imperial curriculum, a merchant who'd donated food to displaced families, a teenage girl who'd painted anti-Empire graffiti, a mechanic who'd refused to inform on his neighbors. They're going to execute them, whether we show up or not. Then we show up. It's a trap. Those Force users will be waiting. Good. Zarathos' presence surged with anticipation. Let them come. We have judged one of their kind already. The others will learn the same lesson. Johnny hesitated, human caution warring with the spirit of vengeance's absolute confidence. In his old life, his old dimension, he'd learned to be strategic, to pick his battles, to know when to retreat. But this wasn't about winning fights. This was about protecting the innocent. And those 6 prisoners would die if Ghost Rider didn't intervene. All right, Johnny agreed. But we do this smart. Hit fast. Grab the prisoners. Get out before they can surround us. We do not run from the guilty. We're not running. We're prioritizing. Zarathos considered this distinction, found it acceptable, and Ghost Rider emerged from the alley. The plaza was exactly as the rider had sensed. Stormtroopers in formation, curious civilians kept at a distance by security barriers, and in the center, a raised platform where an Imperial interrogator in black gloves read charges from a datapad. The 6 prisoners knelt in a line, hands bound, guards behind each one with blasters pointed at their heads. Crimes against the Empire, sedition, conspiracy with known rebel elements, the interrogator droned. Sentence to be carried out immediately as an example to all who would defy Imperial law. The teenage girl was crying. The teacher held his head high, defiant even in the face of death. The mechanic whispered what might have been a prayer to gods the Empire officially didn't recognize. Ghost Rider's engine cut through the interrogator's speech like a lightsaber through flesh. Every head turned, every eye locked on the Hell Cycle as it emerged from the street, riding toward the plaza at a measured pace that somehow felt more threatening than charging speed. Hellfire trailed from the wheels, leaving scorch marks on the Duracrete. The burning skeleton astride it radiated power that made the Force-sensitive officers unconsciously step back. "There!" Colonel Yendrix shouted from his command position. "All units engage. Inquisitors, now!" Stormtroopers opened fire, blaster bolts converging on Ghost Rider from 3 directions. The rider didn't dodge, didn't weave, just rode straight through the barrage as plasma struck bone and burned away into nothingness. Fifth brother and eighth brother leapt from their concealed positions, lightsabers igniting mid-jump, red and purple blades cutting arcs through the air. Ghost Rider didn't slow down. The hell cycle accelerated, and reality seemed to blur around it. Fifth brother's lightsaber strike, perfectly timed, aimed to decapitate, passed through empty space as Ghost Rider simply wasn't there anymore. The motorcycle's supernatural speed carrying it past the Inquisitor before his brain registered the miss. Eighth brother's follow-up slash hit nothing but air and frustration. Ghost Rider reached the execution platform, and his chain lashed out with precision that transcended human capability. The Hellfire links wrapped around all 6 prisoners simultaneously, and instead of burning, the flames protected, forming a barrier that deflected blaster bolts aimed at the captives. With a single pull, Ghost Rider yanked them from the platform, their bonds disintegrating in hellfire as they flew through the air. The rider caught them with telekinetic power that wasn't the Force, but achieved similar results. Pure spiritual energy holding them suspended for a heartbeat before setting them down gently behind the hell cycle. "Run!" Ghost Rider commanded, and they ran, stormtroopers too confused by the chaos to pursue effectively. "Useless!" Fifth brother roared, charging Ghost Rider with his spinning lightsaber leading. The double-bladed weapon whirled with deadly precision, each strike capable of cutting through durasteel, bone, flesh. The lightsaber struck Ghost Rider's skeletal arm and stopped dead, plasma blade pressing against bone that refused to yield. Fifth brother's eyes widened behind his mask. "Impossible!" Ghost Rider grabbed the lightsaber's hilt with his free hand. Hellfire erupted along the weapon's length, and the Dewooten Inquisitor screamed as the flames traveled up his arms, burning not flesh, but something deeper. He released the weapon, stumbling backward, and Ghost Rider casually tossed the spinning lightsaber away. Eighth brother attacked from behind, using the Force to enhance his speed, blade aimed for the rider's spine. Ghost Rider spun, caught the lightsaber between skeletal palms, and headbutted the Inquisitor with a flaming skull that struck with the force of a speeder collision. Eighth brother flew backward, crashed through a security barrier, and lay stunned, his yellow eyes unfocused. "You hunt the innocent," Ghost Rider stated, hellfire intensifying as Zarathos's fury built. "You torture the helpless, you serve tyrants and call it duty." "We serve the Empire," Fifth brother snarled, calling his lightsaber back to his hand with the Force. "We serve Lord Vader. Excuses." The word cut deeper than any blade. Fifth brother felt something in that moment, a weight settling on his shoulders, a presence examining every choice he'd made since joining the Inquisitorius, every Jedi he'd hunted, every innocent he'd killed to maintain his cover, every time he'd told himself it was necessary, justified, the only way to survive. The spirit of vengeance saw it all. "Look into my eyes." "No." Fifth brother threw up every Force defense he possessed, surrounding himself with dark side energy, creating barriers of pure malevolent power that had deflected Jedi attacks and rebel weapons. None of it mattered. The pennant stare pierced through the Force like it didn't exist, struck directly into Fifth brother's consciousness, and showed him what he'd become. Every face of every Padawan he'd killed rose up in perfect clarity. Every scream, every plea for mercy he'd ignored, every moment of suffering he'd inflicted, experienced now from the victim's perspective with absolute, undeniable reality. Fifth brother's lightsaber fell from nerveless fingers. His knees buckled, And as he collapsed, his mind trapped in an endless loop of his own atrocities, one thought echoed through the breaking pieces of his psyche. I deserve this. Eighth brother, recovering from the headbutt, saw his fellow Inquisitor fall and made the only logical choice. He ran. Using the Force to enhance his speed, he leapt to a nearby rooftop and fled, pride sacrificed to survival instinct. Ghost Rider let him go. The spirit of vengeance could always find him later. Stormtroopers surrounded the plaza now, dozens of them, but they held their fire. They'd watched two Inquisitors, beings who could deflect blaster bolts with their minds and kill with a gesture, get dismantled like training droids. Morale was a fragile thing, and watching a burning skeleton render the Empire's elite enforcers catatonic had shattered it completely. Then the plaza went cold. Not physically cold. The Hellfire still burned. The air still shimmered with heat. But something entered the area that made reality itself seem to contract, to bend around a single point of absolute darkness. Stormtroopers stepped back unconsciously. Even Ghost Rider's flames flickered and dimmed slightly. Darth Vader descended into the plaza using the Force to lower himself from a command center balcony, cape billowing, red lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss that echoed off surrounding buildings. He landed 20 meters from Ghost Rider, and when he spoke, his mechanical voice carried across the plaza with undeniable authority. I am Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. You have attacked servants of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender, or you will be destroyed. Ghost Rider's skull turned to face Vader fully, Hellfire eyes meeting the dark lenses of the Sith Lord's mask. Two beings who'd killed countless enemies. Two forces that operated outside normal morality. Two entities defined by the choices they'd made when power was placed in their hands. Darth Vader. Ghost Rider's voice echoed with the weight of judgment itself. The Force trembles with the blood on your hands. The galaxy screams with the pain you've caused. Your soul burns with guilt you've spent decades trying to bury. Vader's lightsaber lowered slightly, a minute gesture, but telling. You know nothing of me. I know everything, Ghost Rider corrected. And suddenly Johnny Blaze's human consciousness surged forward, accessing information through their supernatural connection. I see Anakin Skywalker beneath the mask. I see the Jedi Temple burning. I see younglings falling to your blade. I see Padme Amidala dying with your Force choke still fresh on her throat. I see every choice that led you here. The plaza went absolutely silent. Even the Stormtroopers seemed to have stopped breathing. No one spoke to Vader like this. No one referenced that name, those crimes, those memories. The penalty for such insolence was death. But Vader didn't strike. His respirator cycled once, twice, 3 times. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been genuine curiosity. What are you? Ghost Rider's answer was simple, absolute, and terrifying. Your judgment. The two forces stood facing each other across 20 meters of scorched plaza. Hell's vengeance incarnate and the dark side's most terrible enforcer. Stormtroopers maintained their perimeter, but no longer aimed their weapons, instinctively understanding they were witnessing something beyond their capacity to influence. This was a confrontation between powers that transcended blaster fire and military tactics. Vader's lightsaber hummed, the crimson blade casting red light across his black armor. Judgment, he repeated, the word distorted through his vocabulary. Many have tried to judge me. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Emperor, even the Force itself, all failed. You will be no different. They judged with words and philosophy, Ghost Rider countered, the Hell Cycle's engine growling low like a predator preparing to strike. I judge with truth. The truth of what you've done. The truth your victims experienced. The truth you've buried beneath armor and machinery and the dark side's lies. Vader extended his free hand, and the Force erupted from his palm. Not a push or a pull, but pure crushing pressure that had crumpled AT-ST walkers and compacted rebel soldiers into unrecognizable masses. The invisible wave of power struck Ghost Rider with enough force to atomize an ordinary being. Ghost Rider didn't move. The force wave broke around him like water around stone, dispersing harmlessly into the surrounding air. Hellfire flared brighter, feeding on the dark side energy, transmuting Vader's power into fuel for the spirit of vengeance. "Your force cannot touch me," Ghost Rider stated, matter of fact. "I exist outside its laws, outside your understanding." Vader's respirator quickened, the only sign of his surprise. In 20 years of serving the Emperor, he'd never encountered anything truly immune to the Force. Resistant, yes. Difficult to affect, certainly. But complete immunity? That defied everything he understood about the universe. The Dark Lord shifted tactics. If the Force couldn't reach this entity directly, then the environment would serve. Vader thrust both hands skyward, and the Force seized a hovering Lambda-class shuttle waiting on standby. The entire craft, 20-ton war machine, tore from its moorings and hurtled toward Ghost Rider like a meteor. Ghost Rider gunned the Hell Cycle, and the motorcycle launched forward with supernatural acceleration. The shuttle struck the plaza where the rider had been a nanosecond earlier, exploding in a fireball that sent shrapnel screaming in all directions. Stormtroopers dove for cover. Civilians behind barriers screamed and fled. But Ghost Rider was already airborne. The Hell Cycle riding the shockwave like a surfer on a wave of destruction. The motorcycle defied gravity, angling mid-flight toward Vader, Hellfire trailing in a spiral pattern that lit the evening sky orange and black. Vader's lightsaber came up in a defensive stance, Form 5, Gem So, the aggressive style he'd perfected over decades. But Ghost Rider wasn't wielding a lightsaber. The rider's chain lashed out while still airborne, Hellfire links extending with impossible reach, wrapping around Vader's extended arm. The Sith Lord felt it immediately. Not heat, but something worse. The Hellfire burned through his armor's environmental seals, through his cybernetic limbs, reaching for something deeper. Not his mechanical body, but the presence within. The pain that defined him. The guilt he'd converted into rage. Vader channeled the dark side fully, letting raw power flood through his body. He pulled on the chain, using the Force to enhance his strength beyond even his considerable cybernetic capabilities. Ghost Rider flew toward him faster than intended, and Vader's lightsaber swept in a horizontal arc designed to bisect the rider at the spine. Ghost Rider twisted mid-flight, skeletal hand catching Vader's wrist just below the lightsaber hilt. The blade stopped centimeters from the rider's ribcage, held in place not by the Force, but by physical strength that matched Vader's augmented power. They hung there for a moment, locked in a test of pure force. The lightsaber's plasma blade casting dancing shadows across Ghost Rider's burning skull. "Strong," Ghost Rider acknowledged, and both Johnny and Zarathos felt grudging respect for Vader's power. But strength without purpose is wasted. What do you fight for, Anakin Skywalker? "Do not use that name," Vader roared, and the Force exploded outward in an omnidirectional blast that shattered windows in a 50-meter radius. The shockwave sent Ghost Rider skidding backward, boots carving trenches in Duracrete, but the rider remained upright, Hellfire chain still connected to Vader's arm. The Dark Lord advanced, lightsaber weaving through attack patterns that had killed Jedi Masters. Each strike came from unpredictable angles, overhead chop, transitioning to lateral sweep, transitioning to upward thrust. The fighting style of someone who'd studied every lightsaber form and synthesized them into something uniquely deadly. Ghost Rider met each strike not with a weapon, but with bare skeletal hands. Bone that should have severed at the lightsaber's touch instead caught the blade, held it, redirected it. Hellfire wrapped around the plasma, and Vader felt his lightsaber's connection to the Force weakening, the kyber crystal inside screaming in protest as supernatural fire touched its structure. He's adapting, Vader realized with cold clarity. Learning my patterns. This isn't random. It's intelligent, tactical. Vader disengaged, using the Force to launch himself backward 20 meters, breaking the chain's connection. His armor's readings were concerning. Structural integrity compromised in multiple sections, power cell fluctuating, respiratory system showing stress. And beneath the physical damage, something worse, a nagging sensation he hadn't felt in years. Not pain, not anger, something that tasted like fear. No, not fear, recognition. You cannot win this fight, Vader stated. And it wasn't bravado, it was tactical assessment. I am Sith. The dark side grants me power beyond your comprehension. I have destroyed armies, toppled governments, ended dynasties. What are you but a burning corpse? Ghost Rider tilted his skull, and when he spoke, Johnny Blaze's human consciousness pushed forward, adding weight to Zarathos's judgment. You're right. We probably can't beat you in straight combat. You're too powerful, too experienced, too enhanced by machinery and the dark side. The admission hung in the air, unexpected. But I don't need to beat you, Vader. I just need you to look at yourself. Vader felt it then, the shift in the rider's stance, the gathering of power that wasn't physical force, but something else entirely. The entity's eye sockets flared brighter, hellfire intensifying until the entire plaza was bathed in orange light. Look into my eyes, Ghost Rider commanded, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Your soul is stained by the blood of thousands. Feel their pain. The penance stare launched like a spear of pure judgment, aimed directly at Vader's consciousness. But Vader was prepared. He'd watched the security footage a dozen times, analyzed how the technique worked, understood it bypassed physical defenses to strike at consciousness directly. The moment the rider's power reached for him, Vader did something he'd trained for, but never truly tested. He severed his connection to the Force entirely, collapsing his presence into a singularity of dark side energy so dense that nothing could penetrate it. The penance stare struck the barrier and stopped, unable to find purchase on a target that had made itself effectively non-existent within the Force. It was the ultimate defensive technique, one that left Vader vulnerable to physical attack, but created a fortress around his mind that even this supernatural assault couldn't breach. Ghost Rider's flames flickered with surprise. Impossible. The penance stare has never... I am Darth Vader, the Sith Lord stated with absolute conviction. I have faced the Emperor's mental assaults. I have resisted techniques that break lesser minds like glass. Whatever your power, it requires a target, and I have removed myself from your reach. It was true. By collapsing his Force presence so completely, Vader had created a void the penance stare couldn't penetrate. But it was a technique he could maintain for only minutes before the strain damaged his already fragile life support systems. He was buying time, not winning. Ghost Rider seemed to understand this. The rider's skull tilted, studying Vader with supernatural senses that perceived what scanners couldn't. You hide well, Johnny's voice emerged, more human than demonic. But you can't hide forever. Eventually, you'll have to lower your guard. And when you do, we'll be there. Then I will destroy you before that moment arrives, Vader replied, raising his lightsaber for another assault. But before either could move, a new presence entered the plaza. Not physical. Something transmitted through communication devices, holographic projectors, and the very air itself. Every Stormtrooper's helmet received the same encrypted signal, Every officer's comlink activated simultaneously. And across the plaza, a massive holographic display flickered to life, showing a face that made even Ghost Rider's Hellfire seem pale by comparison. Emperor Palpatine. The hologram was gigantic, 3 stories tall, showing the Emperor's wrinkled face and yellow Sith eyes in perfect detail. When he spoke, his voice carried through every speaker in Capital City, reaching millions of citizens and soldiers simultaneously. Lord Vader, Palpatine's voice dripped with malevolent curiosity. I sense a disturbance, a presence that does not belong to our galaxy. How interesting. Vader immediately restored his force connection, the defensive collapse too draining to maintain with the Emperor watching. He knelt, one fist against the scorched Duracrete. My master. The entity has proven resistant to conventional attacks. I was preparing to. You were preparing to lose, Palpatine interrupted, and the words carried disappointed amusement. I felt it through our connection. This being bypasses the Force entirely. How deliciously ironic. We who have mastered the greatest power in the galaxy, confronted by something that renders it irrelevant. The Emperor's massive holographic face turned toward Ghost Rider, yellow eyes studying the burning skeleton with the intensity of a scientist examining a unique specimen. What are you, creature? From whence do you come? What power sustains you? Ghost Rider's flames intensified, and Zarathos's consciousness surged forward, sensing something in the Emperor that triggered the spirit of vengeance's deepest fury. Palpatine, the rider's voice boomed across the plaza. I sense corruption that spans decades. Manipulation, murder, genocide. You orchestrated a galactic war that killed billions. You destroyed an entire order of peacekeepers. You turned a democracy into a dictatorship through lies and fear. Yes, Palpatine agreed simply and smiled, a terrible expression that held no warmth, only satisfaction. I did all of that, and I would do it again. The Sith have ruled from shadows for a millennium, and I brought us into the light. I am the culmination of Darth Bane's vision, the apex of dark side mastery. Your judgment means nothing to me, Spirit. I have transcended morality itself. The casual admission, the complete lack of shame or justification, seemed to give Ghost Rider pause. Most beings tried to defend their actions, to rationalize or excuse. Palpatine simply owned his atrocities with the pride of an artist discussing a masterwork. Then you will burn brightest of all, Ghost Rider stated, and everyone in the plaza heard the promise in those words. Not a threat, a certainty. Palpatine's smile widened. Perhaps, but not today. Lord Vader, withdraw. I have other plans for this entity. The hologram flickered. As for you, spirit of vengeance, yes, I know what you are. The dark side whispers many secrets. You face a choice. Continue hunting my servants, and I will ensure innocent blood flows like rivers. Every attack you make, I will execute 10 civilians in retaliation. Every stormtrooper you render catatonic, I will burn a village. Your judgment will purchase only greater suffering. Johnny's consciousness recoiled at the threat. He's bluffing. He has to be bluffing. No, Zarathos responded grimly. This one would do exactly as he promises. I sense no deception, only absolute conviction. Or, Palpatine continued, you can leave Lothal, depart this system, inflict your judgment elsewhere in my empire, and I will tolerate your presence, for now, until I devise a method to destroy you permanently. It was a devil's bargain, and both Johnny and Zarathos recognized it. Leave, and Palpatine would use the time to research weaknesses, develop countermeasures, perhaps find some way to eliminate Ghost Rider permanently. Stay, and thousands of innocents would die in retaliation. their blood on the rider's hands as surely as if he'd killed them directly. Ghost Rider stood motionless, hellfire flickering as human conscience and demonic vengeance debated the impossible choice. Vader remained kneeling, but his mask turned toward Ghost Rider. And through their brief combat, something like mutual understanding had formed. Both were weapons. Both had killed for causes they believed in. Both carried weight that armor and fire couldn't fully hide. The Sith Lord said nothing, offered no advice, but his presence seemed to ask a question. What will you choose when all choices lead to suffering? Around them, Lothal held its breath. Stormtroopers watched. Civilians peered from behind barriers. And somewhere in the city's depths, the 6 prisoners Ghost Rider had saved whispered prayers to a burning spirit who'd given them hope that even the Empire's might could be challenged. Ghost Rider's engine revved once, a sound like damnation itself. "I leave," the rider finally stated, and the words tasted like ash even through hellfire. "But not because I fear you, Emperor. I leave because the innocent deserve better than becoming pawns in your games." "Wise," Palpatine purred. "But know this, if you return to Lothal, or any world directly under my command, the retaliation will be absolute. Test me, and I will show you that even spirits can know regret." The hologram flickered out, leaving only silence and the lingering sense of malevolent intelligence. Vader rose, deactivating his lightsaber. He stared at Ghost Rider for a long moment, then spoke words that surprised even himself. "You fight for justice. I respect that. But justice in this galaxy is more complex than guilt and innocence. Remember that, Spirit, before your judgment destroys more than it saves." Ghost Rider's skull turned toward the fallen 5th brother, still catatonic on the scorched plaza. "He earned his judgment. So did your 7th sister. So will every servant of darkness who preys on the helpless." "Perhaps," Vader conceded. "But the Empire spans 1,000,000 worlds. How many can you save before you burn yourself out? How many guilty souls can you judge before the innocent pay the price?" The question hung in the air without answer, because there was no good answer. Ghost Rider gunned the Hell Cycle, and the motorcycle surged forward, riding through the Stormtrooper perimeter as soldiers scrambled aside. Within seconds, the rider had disappeared into Lothal's maze of industrial sectors, leaving only flames and the memory of judgment delivered. Vader stood alone in the plaza, surrounded by his broken inquisitors and shaken troops, and allowed himself a moment of reflection. The entity was gone, but not defeated. The Emperor had bought time with threats, but threats only worked on beings with conscience. And something told Vader that conscience was both the spirit's greatest strength and its most exploitable weakness. The Dark Lord activated his comlink. "Colonel Yendrik, lift the planetary quarantine. The entity is leaving, but maintain surveillance. If it returns, I want to know immediately." "Yes, my lord." "And the Inquisitors?" Vader looked at 5th Brother's catatonic form, saw the slack face and empty eyes of someone trapped in eternal punishment. "Transfer them to medical facilities on Coruscant. The Emperor's scientists may find them useful for study." As stormtroopers moved to comply, Vader returned to his shuttle, cape billowing in wind that carried the faint scent of hellfire. He'd faced the entity and survived. Barely. But survival wasn't victory, and victory wasn't resolution. Somewhere in the galaxy, the spirit of vengeance rode free, hunting the guilty, bringing judgment to those who thought themselves beyond consequence. And Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, enforcer of the Empire, bearer of countless sins, knew with absolute certainty that their paths would cross again. When that day came, one of them would burn. The only question was which one. Ghost Rider rode through hyperspace lanes that shouldn't have existed. The Hell Cycle had torn a rift in real space 3 hours after leaving Lothal. The motorcycle's supernatural engine creating a tunnel through dimensions that bypassed the conventional, faster-than-light travel of Star Wars vessels. No Navi computer guided this journey. No hyperspace coordinates calculated safe routes. The spirit of vengeance simply willed passage, and reality bent to accommodate Hellfire and Bone. Inside their shared consciousness, Johnny Blaze and Zarathos debated their next move. "We should have stayed," Johnny argued, his human conscience still wrestling with the decision to leave. Those people needed protection. The Empire's still there, still oppressing them. And if we had stayed, Palpatine would have executed thousands in retaliation. Zarathos countered with the cold logic of an ancient entity that had witnessed civilizations rise and fall. The Emperor is not like other tyrants. He possesses patience, cunning, and absolute conviction. He would have drowned Lothal in blood to prove his point. So we just let him win? We let him think he won. There is a difference. The Hell Cycle emerged from its dimensional tunnel into real space above a world Johnny didn't recognize. Swirling clouds of orange and brown. Massive storms visible even from orbit, and absolutely no sign of Imperial presence. Sensors that shouldn't work on a motorcycle registered the planet. Ryloth, homeworld of the Twi'leks, a species Johnny had seen among Lothal's prisoners. "Here," Zarathos declared. "We hunt here." Johnny accessed their shared supernatural senses, perceiving the planet below not through normal vision, but through the lens of guilt and innocence. Ryloth glowed with suffering, not the concentrated darkness of Imperial occupation, but something more insidious. Criminal enterprises, slavery rings, corruption that ran deep through legitimate business fronts. The Empire controls this world too? No. The Hutts do. Crime lords who traffic in flesh, who enslave entire populations, who grow fat on misery and call it commerce. Zarathos's fury built like pressure in a sealed reactor. Different masters, same sins. The Hell Cycle descended through Ryloth's atmosphere, Hellfire trail carving through clouds like a comet's path. Below, the planet's surface resolved into details. Arid badlands, scattered settlements, and in the distance, the glowing lights of a major city built into canyon walls. Lesu, the capital, where Twi'lek clans navigated the dangerous politics of maintaining autonomy while paying tribute to both the Empire and criminal syndicates. But Ghost Rider wasn't heading for the capital. The rider's supernatural senses had detected something else. A compound in the wastes, shielded from casual observation, where guilt concentrated like a beacon. Slavery. Dozens of souls trapped, suffering, their despair radiating through the Force. Even though the rider didn't use that energy, the Hell Cycle touched down a kilometer from the compound, and Ghost Rider dismounted, boots striking stone that had been baked by twin suns for millennia. The motorcycle's engine idled quietly, waiting, while the rider surveyed the target. The compound sprawled across 2 hectares of desert, surrounded by energy barriers and guard towers. Through walls and distance, Ghost Rider perceived the layout. Barracks for guards, storage facilities for spice and weapons, and at the center, pens where Twi'lek slaves were kept between auctions. Children and adults mixed together, malnourished, beaten, hopeless. Guards patrolled in rotating shifts, not stormtroopers, but mercenaries and thugs wearing mismatched armor, carrying blasters and vibroblades. 27 of them, and Ghost Rider's supernatural sight revealed their sins in vivid detail. Most were guilty of violence, theft, murder for hire. 3 had killed for pleasure. 1 had specialized in breaking slaves who showed defiance. That one would burn brightest. "Strategic approach?" Johnny asked, falling back into tactical thinking from his years as a stunt rider who'd fought supernatural threats. "No strategy needed," Zarathos responded. only judgment. Ghost Rider walked toward the compound at a measured pace, Hellfire building with each step. No stealth, no subtlety. The spirit of vengeance announced its presence like a funeral bell, because the guilty deserved to see judgment coming. The first guard spotted the burning skeleton approaching and grabbed his comlink. "What the... base? We've got an intruder, some kind of..." His words died as his brain struggled to process what his eyes reported. Burning skull, walking calmly, leaving footprints of fire in the sand. "Stop right there," the guard shouted, raising his blaster. "This is private property. Turn around or I'll..." Ghost Rider kept walking. The guard fired. The blaster bolt struck the rider's chest and vanished into Hellfire, consumed and converted into fuel. The guard fired again and again, emptying his power pack in a panic. Every shot disappeared into orange flames that only grew brighter. "You profit from suffering," Ghost Rider stated, now close enough that the guard could feel heat radiating from burning bone. "You cage the innocent. You sell them like property. Your crimes end tonight." The guard dropped his blaster and ran, screaming into his comlink for backup. Alarms blared across the compound, and guards poured from barracks, weapons ready. The compound's owner, a Zabrak named Drex, who'd built his fortune on Twi'lek flesh, emerged from the main building, twin blaster pistols in hand. "What's going on out here?" Drex bellowed, then stopped as he saw Ghost Rider approaching through his front gate. The energy barrier was still active, crackling with enough power to fry anything that touched it. Ghost Rider walked through it like it didn't exist, Hellfire consuming the electrical field and leaving a skeleton-shaped hole in the barrier. "Open fire! All units, open fire!" Drex screamed. 26 guards unleashed a concentrated barrage that would have shredded a light freighter. Blaster bolts converged on Ghost Rider from every angle, and for a moment, the rider vanished in a storm of superheated plasma. When the firing stopped, Ghost Rider stood unchanged, Hellfire burning brighter than before, every shot having fed the flames rather than damaged them. The rider's chain materialized in skeletal hands, not a physical chain pulled from storage, but one that existed between dimensions, drawn from hell itself when needed. The chain lashed out. Hellfire links wrapped around the nearest guard's blaster, yanked it away, and swung the weapon like a flail to strike 3 other guards in rapid succession. They fell unconscious, not from blunt trauma, but from brief contact with flames that judged them and found them wanting. The chain extended impossibly, wrapping around support beams of the nearest guard tower, and Ghost Rider pulled. The entire tower collapsed, dumping 2 guards who scrambled away in terror. The rider advanced through their formation like a force of nature, chains spinning in patterns that defied physics, each strike precisely calculated. Guards who'd killed innocents fell catatonic, trapped in penance stare visions even without direct eye contact. The chain itself carried judgment now, burning with the weight of their crimes. Guards with lesser sins fell unconscious, their souls scorched but not destroyed. Ghost Rider's judgment was measured even in fury, distinguishing between foot soldiers who'd made bad choices, babies and true monsters who reveled in suffering. Drex fired both blaster pistols, backing toward his personal transport. "You can't do this. I have connections. The Hutts protect this operation. You attack me, you attack them." Ghost Rider's skull turned toward Drex with Hellfire eyes that saw through false bravado to the terrified criminal beneath. "The Hutts are not here. You are, and your judgment is at hand." Drex threw his blasters aside and ran, force-enhanced speed. Wait, no, he wasn't force-sensitive, just panicked and desperate, adrenaline pushing his body beyond normal limits. He reached his transport, a sleek yacht designed for quick escapes, and slammed the hatch controls. The chain wrapped around the ship's landing strut. Drex fired the engines anyway, and the yacht's repulsor lifts screamed as they fought against Hellfire-forged links that refused to break. The ship tilted, engines overloading, and Ghost Rider simply held the chain steady. With one sharp pull, the rider yanked the entire yacht back to the ground, where it crashed in a spray of sand and metal. Drex crawled from the wreckage, broken ribs limiting his movement, and found himself face to face with judgment incarnate. "Please," he gasped, all arrogance stripped away by pain and terror. "I'll release them. All of them. The slaves, they're yours. Just let me live. You've sold over 400 sentient beings in the last 5 years," Ghost Rider stated. And Drex realized with horror that this thing knew everything, every sale, every beating, every child separated from parents. 37 died in your custody. You worked 3 to death. You beat 1 for entertainment. You sold families to different buyers, deliberately separating them. "I was just following market demand," Drex pleaded. "Supply and demand, it's just business. Business." The word came out wrapped in such contempt that Drex flinched. "You reduced living beings to inventory. You quantified suffering as profit margins. You told yourself it was just commerce to avoid confronting what you are." Ghost Rider crouched, bringing his burning skull level with Drex's face. "Look into my eyes. See what you've done. Feel what they felt." "No. Please, I'm sorry. I'll change. The penitent stare struck with the force of concentrated justice. Drex experienced every moment of suffering he'd inflicted. Felt the despair of children torn from mothers. Felt the physical agony of beings worked past exhaustion. Felt the hopelessness of captives who'd given up on rescue. Felt the final moments of those 37 who died in his pens, their last thoughts cursing his name. When Ghost Rider released him, Drex collapsed into a fetal position, whimpering, his mind locked in an endless loop of experiencing his own atrocities. Alive, but functionally destroyed, trapped in a prison of his own making. Ghost Rider stood and turned toward the slave pens. The remaining guards, those not unconscious or catatonic, had fled into the desert, abandoning their posts and their employer. Smart choice. The rider approached the pen's main gate, reinforced durasteel locked with electronic systems designed to resist both brute force and slicing attempts. Ghost Rider placed one skeletal hand against the lock, and Hellfire poured through the mechanism. Metal melted, circuits fused, and the gate swung open. Inside, 43 Twi'leks stared at their liberator with expressions mixing terror and desperate hope. They'd heard the sounds of battle, felt the compound shake, and now faced a burning skeleton wreathed in flames that should have been terrifying but somehow felt protective. A young Twi'lek girl, maybe 8 years old, green skin marked with scars from harsh treatment, stepped forward when no adult would. Are you going to hurt us?" Ghost Rider's flames dimmed slightly, Johnny's consciousness pushing forward to gentle Zarathos's fury. When the rider spoke, his voice carried less demonic chorus and more human compassion. "No, little one. I'm here to free you, all of you." "Are you a Jedi?" another asked, an adult male missing his left head tail from some past trauma. "No. I'm something else. Something that hunts those who harm innocents." Ghost Rider gestured toward the compound's exit. "Go. Return to your families. This place will never cage anyone again." They hesitated, decades of captivity making freedom seem like a trap. But the girl, braver than adults twice her age, took the first step, walking past Ghost Rider toward the open desert. Others followed her example, then more, until all 43 were moving toward freedom, some crying, some laughing, some too shocked to express emotion. Ghost Rider watched them go, ensuring they cleared the compound before turning his attention to destroying it. The chain wrapped around support pillars, and the rider pulled. Buildings collapsed. Energy barriers failed. Weapon stores ignited in secondary explosions that sent flames hundreds of meters into Ryloth's night sky. Within minutes, the compound was rubble and fire, a warning to anyone else who profited from suffering. The hell cycle materialized from shadows. It had never truly left, simply existed in a state between dimensions until needed. Ghost Rider mounted the motorcycle, and together they rode into the desert, leaving the freed slaves to find their way home, while the compound burned as a beacon of justice delivered. Johnny's consciousness stirred with satisfaction. That felt right. No empire to threaten retaliation. No emperor holding innocents hostage. Just us and the guilty. Yes, Zarathos agreed. The spirit's ancient fury satiated for the moment. This is our purpose. Not grand battles with Sith lords, but protecting the helpless from predators. The galaxy is vast, and the guilty are endless. Where next? Ghost Rider's skull turned toward the stars, supernatural senses reaching across light years to detect concentrations of guilt and suffering. So many signals, so many places where injustice thrived. Criminal cartels on Nar Shaddaa, pirate clans in the Outer Rim, corporate exploitation on Corellia, and beneath it all, the Empire's shadow. But now Ghost Rider understood. The Emperor was merely the largest predator in an ocean of monsters. The galaxy didn't need Ghost Rider to topple governments or destroy armadas. It needed judgment delivered to those who operated in shadows, who preyed on the vulnerable, who convinced themselves that might made right or profit excused atrocity. We ride, Zarathos declared. We hunt, we judge, until every guilty soul has faced vengeance. The hell cycle roared to life, and Ghost Rider disappeared into Ryloth's night, a burning legend beginning to spread through Outer Rim communication networks. Freed slaves would tell stories, surviving guards would whisper warnings, and slowly, a message would propagate through criminal circles and Imperial garrisons alike. There was something new in the galaxy, something that couldn't be bargained with, couldn't be bought, couldn't be stopped. Something that saw through lies and armor and rank to the crimes beneath. And if you were guilty, it was coming for you. The spirit of vengeance had found its hunting ground, and the galaxy would never be the same. The desert wind carried the scent of ash and freedom as the last embers of Drex's compound cooled. High above, the twin moons of Ryloth cast pale light across the freed Twi'leks trekking homeward. Ghost Rider watched them until they were specks on the horizon, their hope a tangible warmth against the chill of the night. The legend of the burning ghost spread through the Outer Rim's criminal underworld like a contagion. On Nar Shaddaa, smugglers in grimy cantinas swapped increasingly embellished tales. On Tatooine, Hutt enforcers added the specter to their list of superstitions, right alongside the curse of the Sarlacc. In the corporate towers of Canto Bight, wealthy slavers quietly increased security, laughing off the stories in public while privately checking their accounts for signs of unusual activity. Ghost Rider rode the currents between these worlds, the hell cycle navigating not just space, but the deeper, darker channels where guilt pooled thickest. In the 3 standard weeks since Ryloth, the spirit of vengeance had become a surgical instrument against the galaxy's festering wounds. They struck a pirate haven in the Roche asteroid field, where raiders preyed on refugee convoys fleeing Imperial expansion. The pennant stare left the pirate captain a shuddering husk, forever reliving the terror of the families he'd spaced. They descended upon a secret Imperial bioweapons lab on the swamp moon of Mimban, where a cold-hearted scientist experimented on captured Wookiees. Ghost Rider reduced the facility to molten slag, the lead researcher's mind shattered by the combined agony of every test subject. Each strike was precise. Each judgment was final. And after each, Ghost Rider vanished, leaving only hellfire and rumors. But the galaxy was not a static tapestry. Factions observed, analyzed, and recalibrated. In a dimly lit safehouse on the galactic capital of Coruscant, deep in the works, where the planet's mechanical heart beat loud enough to mask any conversation, two figures met. One was a Togruta woman with white montrals and blue skin. Her presence in the Force, a calm, steady light carefully concealed beneath layers of civilian disguise. The other was a human man with a sharp face and sharper eyes, his posture that of a soldier permanently braced for impact. Ahsoka Tano studied the holoprojector's flickering images. Security stills from Lothal, damage reports from Ryloth, blurred sensor ghosts from Mimban. It's the same entity, Captain Rex. The descriptions are too consistent to be anything else. Rex, former clone captain of the 501st, now a grizzled rebel operative, scratched his chin. Intel from our cells on Lothal says it took on Vader and 2 Inquisitors, walked away without a scratch. The imps are calling it a dark side anomaly, but our contacts in the medical corps say the victims aren't Force sensitive. They're psychologically fractured, like they've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, Ahsoka murmured, her fingers tracing the outline of the burning skull. Something else. I tried to sense it from afar when it was on Lothal. The Force doesn't react to it. It's like a hole, a silence where there should be a song. That sounds dangerous. Perhaps, but it only targets the guilty. Imperial oppressors, slavers, pirates. It hasn't harmed a single confirmed innocent. In fact, it actively protects them. She deactivated the projector. The rebellion could use a weapon like that. Rex's expression turned grim. With all due respect, Commander, a weapon you can't control is a liability. What if it decides one of our cells is guilty? We've all done things in this war we're not proud of. That's exactly why we need to understand it, Ahsoka insisted. Not to control it. To know if it can be an ally, or if it's a threat that will eventually turn on everyone. She made her decision. I'm going to find it. Ahsoka, I have to, Rex. The Force is silent on this, which means it's outside the Jedi-Sith dichotomy. That makes it the most important unknown in the galaxy right now. She stood, gathering her cloak. Monitor Imperial chatter. If it strikes again, I want to be there. The strike happened on a remote Imperial fuel depot orbiting the gas giant Yavin Prime. The depot was a legitimate logistical target, but rebel intelligence had uncovered its darker purpose. It served as a covert transfer point for high-value detainees, political prisoners being secretly shipped to the Emperor's secret prisons. Ahsoka's modified RZ-1 A-Wing, the Ashla, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. She'd been 2 sectors away when Rex's coded burst transmission arrived. She was still minutes out when her sensors picked up the chaos. The depot was a sprawling collection of storage spheres and docking arms. Normally, it would be crawling with TIE fighters and patrol shuttles. Now, it was a scene from a nightmare. A trail of Hellfire, visible even in the vacuum of space, weaved between the structures. A skeletal figure rode a motorcycle that shouldn't function in space, moving with impossible agility. TIE fighters screamed in pursuit, laser cannons blazing. Their shots either missed or were absorbed into the rider's flames. In return, the rider's chain, glowing with infernal energy, lashed out like a living thing, wrapping around TIE wings and yanking them into collisions with the depot or each other. Ahsoka watched, stunned, as the rider, Ghost Rider, the name felt right, breached the main docking arm. A containment pod, clearly marked for prisoner transport, was torn from its moorings. Instead of jetting into space, the pod was encased in a bubble of orange flame and gently guided toward a waiting rust bucket of a freighter that had just undocked, a rebel extraction ship from the local cell. He's not just attacking, Ahsoka realized. He's coordinating. He's facilitating a rescue. She opened a broad-spectrum comm channel, pouring calm into her voice through the Force. "Unidentified entity, this is Fulcrum. I am not your enemy. I wish to speak." For a moment, there was no response, only the continued destruction of Imperial assets. Then a voice, layered with echoes and the crackle of fire, scraped across her comms. "Your ship carries no guilt, but your presence complicates the mission. Leave. I can help. The Empire is scrambling reinforcements from the nearby garrison. I can create a diversion. Your help is not required. Justice requires no assistance." A Victory-class Star Destroyer emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the depot's defensive zone. Its turbo-laser batteries began to swivel, targeting both the fleeing freighter and the Hellfire streak. "Like it or not," Ahsoka said, throttling her A-wing forward. "You've got it." She cut between the Star Destroyer and the depot, launching a full spread of proton torpedoes, not at the ship itself, but at the unspent fuel canisters floating nearby. The chain reaction of explosions created a temporary debris and plasma field, blinding the Star Destroyer's targeting sensors. Ghost Rider used the distraction. The Hell Cycle shot toward the Star Destroyer's bridge tower, a meteor of bone and flame. Instead of impacting, it passed through the transparisteel viewport as if it were mist. Ahsoka, her senses stretched thin, felt a wave of psychic shock emanate from the ship, not through the Force, but something adjacent, something painfully direct. A scream that wasn't sound echoed in the void. The Star Destroyer's engines flared, and it began a slow, uncontrolled drift. Its command crew neutralized. The rebel freighter, with its rescued prisoners, jumped to hyperspace. The depot burned, its criminal purpose exposed and ended. The Hell Cycle slowed. Floating in the silent space before Ahsoka's cockpit, Ghost Rider turned his burning gaze upon her. Through the canopy, she met the empty, fire-filled sockets. She felt no dark side corruption, no light side serenity. She felt scale, the weight of ages, the cold, patient fury of a fundamental law. The guilty will be punished. She opened her comm again, her voice soft. "Who are you?" "Vengeance." "For whom? For what cause?" "The cause is justice. The guilty are legion. The hunt is eternal." The rider's head tilted. "You carry light, and you carry scars. You have fought the darkness. You have also judged." It wasn't an accusation. It was an observation. Ahsoka thought of the Jedi who fell during Order 66, of the Inquisitors she'd been forced to cut down, of the choices she'd made walking her path alone. I try to do what's right. Right. Wrong. These are mortal concepts. I deal in guilt and innocence, crime and punishment. The chain retracted into his hand. "Your rebellion fights a political war. I fight a moral one. Do not confuse them." "You're making a difference," Ahsoka pressed. "You could make a greater one." "The rebellion is filled with the guilty," the rider interrupted, his voice a low rumble. "The spy who sacrifices informants, the soldier who bombs a civilian area to hit one Imperial officer, the idealist who compromises until they become what they hate. Would you have me judge them, Fulcrum?" The question hung in the cold vacuum. Ahsoka had no answer that wouldn't sound like a hypocrisy. "Your enemy is my enemy," she said finally. "My enemy is sin," Ghost Rider corrected. "The Empire is merely its current flagship." He revved the Hell Cycle's engine, the Hellfire blazing brighter. "You seek an ally. You have found a reckoning. Pray your cause remains just enough to stay out of my path." With a burst of flame that tore a temporary rift in space itself, Ghost Rider and the Hell Cycle vanished, leaving Ahsoka alone with the drifting wreckage and a profound, unsettling truth. The rebellion had just encountered a power that could devastate the Empire. But it was a power that answered to a higher, sterner court than the Alliance's charter. A power that, if turned upon them, would be the end of everything. She punched in the coordinates for the rebel fleet, her mind racing. They needed a new protocol, not for engaging Ghost Rider, but for ensuring they never, ever became his target. The sterile, silent throne room of the Emperor's obsidian citadel on Coruscant was a place where fear was refined into an art form. Darth Vader knelt on the cold floor, the rhythmic hiss of his respirator the only sound for a full minute before the shadow in the throne spoke. The anomaly persists. It was not a question. Emperor Palpatine's voice was a dry whisper that scraped against the mind. Holodisplays flickered around the throne, showing data streams from a dozen worlds. Casualty reports, psychological assessments of the catatonic, sensor logs of impossible energy signatures. "It has moved beyond Imperial space, Master," Vader intoned. "It hunts criminal elements in the Outer Rim, pirate clans, slavers, spice cartels. And you believe this makes it less of a threat?" Palpatine's yellow eyes gleamed in the gloom. "It builds its legend. It demonstrates its power on acceptable targets, gathering the whispers of the oppressed. It creates hope." He spat the word like a toxin. "Hope is the rebellion's weapon. Now, it seems, they have been gifted a new standard bearer, a specter of vengeance. It operates alone. It has made no contact with rebel leadership, save for a brief encounter with the former Jedi, Ahsoka Tano. It rejected her overture." "Of course it did." Palpatine rose, a slow, painful unfolding of dark robes. "It is a primitive, absolutist force. It sees in black and white, guilt and innocence. The rebellion's gray morality is as alien to it as its nature is to us." A thin smile played on his lips. "This is not a setback, Lord Vader. This is an opportunity. The key to destroying a pure enemy is to corrupt its purity." He gestured, and a new hologram sprang to life, a planet of vast, polluted oceans and floating cities. Nal Hutta. The being has disrupted Hutt operations on 3 outlying worlds. The Hutt Council is displeased. Their profits are threatened. Fear is beginning to outweigh greed. Vader understood. The Hutts will attempt to destroy it. "They will fail," Palpatine said dismissively. "But in their failure, they will provide us with a battlefield. And on a battlefield, we can introduce variables." He turned his full gaze on Vader. "You felt its power on Lothal. It resisted the Force. It withstood your blade. But did you sense a weakness?" Vader cycled through the memory. The flames, the unstoppable advance, the penance stare he had barely deflected. "It has a conscience. It protects the innocent. This limits its tactics. It can be baited." "More than that," the Emperor pressed, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "It has a host. The spirit is ancient, but the vessel is a man. I have delved into the darkest archives, into Sith lore that predates the Rule of Two. There are echoes of such beings, spirits of vengeance, bound to mortal shells. The spirit may be invincible, but the man can be tempted. He can be corrupted. And if the vessel breaks, the spirit is unleashed, uncontrolled, or perhaps redirected." The plan unfolded in Vader's mind, cold and precise. "We cannot offer it power. It rejects power as a Sith conceit." "No," Palpatine agreed. "We offer it truth. The bitter, complex truth that its simplistic morality cannot digest." He pointed a gnarled finger at the hologram of Nal Hutta. "The Hutts will muster their forces. Let the spirit break them, Let it believe it is winning its holy war. And then, we will show it the consequences. We will show it that in cutting out the cancer, it has killed the patient. That its vengeance creates a vacuum filled by something worse. That in this galaxy, there are no innocent bystanders, only varying degrees of guilt. A spark of something, not approval, not empathy, but tactical recognition, flared behind Vader's mask. The spirit seeks absolute justice. We will show it that absolute justice is absolute chaos. And in that moment of crisis, in that failure of its core purpose, the man will be vulnerable, Palpatine finished, his smile widening into a ghastly grin. And we will be there. Not with a lightsaber, but with an alternative. The dark side does not merely punish. It offers freedom from the paralyzing burden of conscience. It offers the power to shape the galaxy as one sees fit, to impose order on the chaos its own justice creates. We will offer the man a crown of thorns and see if he prefers it to his collar of fire. The atmosphere on Nal Hutta wasn't breathed so much as endured. It was a thick, chemical soup that stung the eyes and coated the throat. The sky was a perpetual bruised orange, stained by the exhaust of 1,000 refineries processing the galaxy's waste. From orbit, Ghost Rider had seen the guilt here not as individual beacons, but as a vast, sickly pall, a planetary-scale infection of greed and cruelty. The Hutt Grand Council had finally been roused to action. The burning ghost was bad for business. It didn't take bribes. It didn't respect territories. It left survivors, catatonic, broken survivors, who told tales that chilled the blood of even the most hardened enforcers. Their response was not subtle. As the Hell Cycle descended toward the primary spaceport of Bilbosa, the sky erupted. A motley armada of pirated Y-Wings, modified Z-95 headhunters, and heavily armored ovoid Hutt fighters swarmed upward. They were not Imperial precise. This was a torrent of lead and laser, a wall of fire meant to overwhelm through sheer volume. "They have united," Zarathos observed, a note of grim satisfaction in their shared mind. "The guilty gather for judgment." "This feels like a trap," Johnny Blaze thought back, weaving the Hell Cycle through a storm of blaster fire. A bolt grazed his shoulder, the Hellfire absorbing and converting the energy with a flare. All traps are sprung from fear. Their fear betrays them. Ghost Rider dove, straight for the heart of the swarm. The chain became a whirling vortex of hellfire, snatching fighters from the sky, tangling their wings, sending them spiraling into each other. The penance stare couldn't be used on pilots sealed in cockpits, but the hellfire could. It seeped through seams, not burning metal, but seeking the soul within. One by one, ships went dead in space, their pilots left as vacant shells. But the Hutts had learned. Their second wave consisted of remote-piloted drones, mindless machines with no guilt to exploit. Missiles and laser fire converged. Ghost Rider rode through explosions that would have vaporized a starfighter, the Hell Cycle emerging from the fireball unscathed. But the sheer kinetic force was a pressure. For the first time, Johnny felt a strain, not in Zarathos's power, but in his own mortal consciousness, the psychic backlash of sustaining such an assault. He broke through the drone cloud and shot toward the towering, garish spires of Gardulla, the Hutt's palace. The real target, the source of the planetary poison. The palace defenses activated. Massive ion cannons, stolen from a decommissioned Republic warship, powered up. They fired not to destroy, but to disable. A focused, wide-aperture burst meant to scramble any and all electronic systems. The Hell Cycle's engine sputtered. The supernatural flames flickered. For a half-second, the rider wavered, the ancient spirit momentarily confused by the technological negation field. It was a unique attack, one born of Hutt cunning. They couldn't fight the magic, so they fought the machine it rode. In that half-second of vulnerability, the trap was sprung. Not from the sky, but from the ground. The entire landing pad beneath him erupted. Not with explosives, but with a net of crackling blue energy. A massive ion net, reinforced with durasteel cables as thick as a man's arm. It wrapped around the Hell Cycle and rider, and with a deafening whine of overloaded winches, yanked them out of the sky. The impact against the palace courtyard shattered stone. The ion charge surged, not harming the rider, but disrupting the mystical energy that allowed the Hell Cycle to phase and defy physics. It was pinned, tangled in a high-tech snare. From the shadows of the courtyard, figures emerged. Not Hutt guards. These were mercenaries of a different caliber, silent, clad in night-black armor, carrying weapons that hummed with a different kind of energy. Force pike-wielding assassins from the Bando Gora, hired with a fortune in spice. And behind them, slithering on his repulsor lift dais, came Gardula the Hutt herself, her enormous body quivering with malice. "So," she gurgled, her voice like oil bubbling through sewage. "The ghost becomes prey. You cost me millions, creature. But you will earn me billions. The Emperor himself has offered a prize for your capture. Alive." Johnny struggled against the ion-charged net. The Hell Cycle was dormant, a mere machine. Under the suppression field, Zarathos raged, but the physical bindings held the skeletal form. "The machine is irrelevant," the spirit roared internally. "The fire is eternal." Ghost Rider's hands gripped the durasteel cables. Hellfire bloomed from his palms, not as an explosion, but as a slow, relentless burn. The metal began to glow white, then drip away like liquid wax. The ion charge grounded out with a spectacular shower of sparks. But the Bando Gora were already moving. They attacked not with blasters, but with force-enhanced speed, their pikes stabbing with precision. The pikes couldn't pierce the rider's bones, but each impact carried a shockwave of dark side energy, a jarring, discordant note against Zarathos' symphony of vengeance. It was a harassment, a delaying action, meant to distract and disorient. Gardula watched, her tiny eyes gleaming. This was the Emperor's first lesson. Your enemy is never just who you think they are. The Hutts were the bait, the Bando Gora the hook, and the real trap was only now being set. As Ghost Rider tore free of the last cable, sending assassins flying with sweeps of his chain, a new hologram flickered to life above the courtyard. It showed not the Emperor, but a calculated selection of security footage from Ghost Rider's previous raids. It showed the slave compound on Ryloth burning. Then it zoomed out, showing the fallout. The power vacuum left by Drex's collapse. A Hutt named Borka had moved in, a creature far more brutal. The footage showed new slaves being brought in, the conditions worse, the punishments more grotesque. The narration, in a smooth Imperial voice, detailed the statistical increase in suffering following the rider's liberation. It showed the pirate haven in the Roche asteroid field, now a silent tomb. Then it showed the nearby, formerly protected trade route. Without the pirates to fear, a Black Sun syndicate had moved in, imposing exorbitant protection fees and executing entire families who couldn't pay. Scene after scene played. Every act of vengeance followed by the brutal, cynical reality of what filled the void. The message was clear, and it was aimed squarely at the man within the spirit. Your justice is a spark in a galaxy of kindling. You burn one evil, and a worse one grows in the ashes. You are not a solution. You are a catalyst for greater suffering. Johnny Blaze felt the assault more keenly than any force pike. This wasn't a lie. His supernatural senses confirmed the truth of the images. He had judged the guilty, but he hadn't stayed to protect the innocent from what came next. He was a destroyer, not a builder. In his wake, only chaos remained. A cold doubt, alien and terrifying, seeped into his shared consciousness with Zarathos. "Do not heed them," Zarathos bellowed. "They show consequence to poison purpose. The guilty must be punished. That is the law." But what's the point if it just makes things worse, Johnny thought, the human anguish sharp and sudden. What if we're just another kind of plague? For the first time, the hellfire around Ghost Rider flickered not from an outside attack, but from an internal conflict. The absolute certainty of the spirit of vengeance wavered, challenged not by a stronger power, but by a more complex truth. In the shadows of the palace, far from the courtyard, a cloaked figure observed. Darth Vader watched the holographic assault, watched the rider's hesitation. The Emperor's plan was in motion. The first crack in the vessel had appeared. The path to corruption was not through offering power, but through fostering despair. And despair was a toxin to which even eternal spirits were not immune. The hellfire guttered like a dying star. For 3 full seconds, Ghost Rider stood motionless in the shattered courtyard, the holographic evidence of his collateral damage playing across his burning skull. The Bando Gora assassins hesitated, sensing the shift in their prey. Inside, a civil war raged. "The truth is not a weapon for the guilty to wield," Zarathos thundered, the spirits rage a white-hot forge in their shared soul. "They show you pain to excuse their own. The punishment is absolute. The law is eternal." "What law?" Johnny Blaze fired back, the images of suffering families under black suns seared into his mind. "Your law leaves ashes and calls it justice. We punish the slaver and a worse monster takes his place. We're not fixing anything, we're just rotating the tyranny. Then we punish the next monster and the next, until none remain. And how many innocents die in the gaps between?" The question was a spear of pure despair, honed by the Emperor's cruel calculus. Johnny, the man, was breaking. The weight of a galaxy's infinite, recursive suffering was crushing the simple, fiery conviction that had sustained him. The crack Vader had observed widened. Gardola the Hutt, misreading the rider's stillness as defeat, let out a gloating laugh. "The fire dies. Seize it. The Emperor wants it functional." But he did not say, "unmarked." The Bando Gora moved as one. Force pikes crackled with malignant energy. This time, their strikes landed with more force. Ghost Rider took a step back, his chain swinging in a slower, defensive arc. A pike scored across his ribs, and for the first time, a chip of blackened bone flew free. It regenerated instantly, but the message was sent and received. He could be hurt. He could be worn down. He was not fighting an army. He was fighting a philosophy, and he was losing. The Hell Cycle, freed from the last of the Ion Net, roared back to unholy life. Ghost Rider mounted it, not to attack, but to retreat. He tore through a palace wall, showering the courtyard with debris, and shot into the polluted sky of Nalhutta. The Hutt fighters, disorganized and terrified, offered only token pursuit. He didn't jump to hyperspace. He simply rode, the Hell Cycle skimming the toxic oceans, leaving a trail of evaporating filth in its wake. He rode without destination, the internal debate consuming him. "We need a new way," Johnny pleaded. "We can't just be destruction. We have to be protection." "Protection is passive," Zarathos countered, but the spirit's voice held a faint, unfamiliar tremor of uncertainty. The holographic evidence had been a masterstroke. It didn't attack their power, it attacked their purpose. Vengeance is active. Vengeance is pure. Is it? Or is it just another kind of violence, wrapped in a pretty moral excuse? The rider found himself on a desolate, rocky island, where the only structures were the ruins of a failed mining operation. He dismounted, the Hellfire dimming to a low, troubled flicker. He stared at his skeletal hands, hands that had delivered so much punishment, and wondered if they had ever truly delivered justice. This was the moment the Sith had anticipated. He did not hear the approach. He felt it. A sudden, profound cold that had nothing to do with temperature. A void in the world's ambient noise. He turned. Darth Vader stood 20 paces away, having descended silently in a personal landing shuttle now hidden behind the rock formations. His red lightsaber remained unlit. He stood with an unnerving stillness, his mask fixed on the troubled specter. "You begin to understand," Vader stated, his mechanical voice flat. "You showed me those consequences." Ghost Rider's voice was less a chorus of damnation, more a ragged mixture of man and spirit. "You designed that lesson. The galaxy designed it. We merely illuminated the pattern." Vader took a single step forward. "You operate on a child's morality, good and evil, guilt and innocence. The universe is a mosaic of grays. Your fire burns all it touches, and in the scorched earth, darker things than you can imagine take root. So I should stop?" The question was pure Johnny Blaze, lost and angry. "That is one path, futility. You will drown in the blood you fail to stem." Vader took another step. "There is another." "Do not listen," Zarathos warned, but the Spirit's command lacked its former invincible authority. "The dark side does not deal in futile absolutes," Vader continued, his words measured, persuasive. "It deals in power, real power. Not to merely punish an individual crime, but to prevent all crime, to impose order, true order. The Empire is that order. It is not pure, it is not innocent, but it is a system, a dam against the chaos you unleash with every righteous murder." Johnny's mind recoiled, but a part of it, the tired, despairing part, was listening. The Empire was monstrous, but it was a contained monstrosity. It had laws, structure. Was a universe under a single, terrible thumb better than a universe of endless, chaotic, competing evils? "The Emperor sees your power," Vader said, his voice dropping, becoming almost intimate. "He does not wish to destroy it. He wishes to channel it. To place your vengeance not at the whim of individual guilt, but in service of galactic stability. You would become the Empire's ultimate justice, not hunting petty slavers, but eradicating whole systems of rebellion that plunge sectors into war. Not creating power vacuums, but enforcing a peace that, while harsh, is predictable. You would save more lives than you could ever save as a rogue spirit." The offer hung in the toxic air. It was a perversion of everything Ghost Rider stood for. And yet, it offered an end to the doubt. It offered a framework, a purpose larger than the next guilty soul. It offered to replace the endless, futile hunt with a defined mission. "It is a lie," Zarathos screamed. "It is a gilded cage. They would make us a weapon for their own guilt. They are the greatest sinners of all." "Are they?" Johnny thought, staring at Vader. "Or are they just the biggest? If we can't fix everything, shouldn't we at least back the side that keeps the most people from getting hurt?" The conflict paralyzed him. The Hellfire winked out. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, the flames died completely. The rider stood revealed not as a burning skeleton, but as a man. Johnny Blaze, clad in the black leather jacket, his face pale and etched with exhaustion and cosmic despair, knelt on the rocks. The Hell Cycle was just a motorcycle. Vader observed this, a profound victory unfolding before him. The spirit was dormant, suppressed by the host's crisis of faith. The man was vulnerable. The Emperor can offer you more than a role, Vader said, moving closer, now standing over Johnny. He can offer you knowledge. The dark side holds secrets of binding, of spirit and flesh. He could separate you from your passenger, free you of this curse. You could retain power, but wield it with reason, with strategy, unburdened by its primitive morality. Johnny looked up, his eyes hollow. Freedom from Zarathos. The thought was intoxicating. To not feel the endless, screaming need for vengeance. To be just a man with power. To make his own choices. He was on the precipice. Then, a new sound cut through the heavy air. Not the scream of a TIE fighter, but the distinctive, throaty roar of a heavily modified freighter, making a dangerous atmospheric entry. A ship painted in Rebel Alliance colors streaked overhead, banking hard. It was coming back. From a speaker on the wreckage, a familiar voice echoed. Ahsoka Tano, broadcasting on every frequency. Ghost Rider, don't listen to him. He's offering you a chainsaw to prune a garden. The Empire's order is built on a foundation of lies and corpses. You think you see complexity? That's the dark side's oldest trick. To confuse you until the only clear path is theirs. Vader's head snapped up. Fulcrum! The word was a curse. His hand went to his lightsaber. Johnny blinked. Ahsoka's words were simple, clear, and cut through the sophisticated Sith logic like his own chain through flesh. A chainsaw to prune a garden. The Empire wasn't order. It was industrialized evil. Partnering with it wouldn't absolve him. It would make him complicit in its every horror. The doubt didn't vanish, but it crystallized into a new, solid truth. Some choices were so wrong that even a choice made in despair was better. The spark of Hellfire reignited in his eyes. Not the full conflagration, but a pilot light, a promise. Vader saw it. The moment was lost. His persuasive mask vanished, replaced by the Enforcer. His lightsaber ignited with a vengeful snap hiss. Then you will be broken the traditional way. He lunged, the crimson blade a blur aimed to cleave Johnny in two. The hell cycle was too far. Johnny had no weapon. He had only the ember of vengeance and a refusal to fall. He did not raise his hands to block the impossible. He looked Vader dead in the mask and spoke a single word. Not with Zarathos's power, but with Johnny Blaze's defiant humanity. No. The Dark Lord of the Sith, for reasons he would never understand, hesitated. For less than a heartbeat, the certainty of his strike faltered. It was enough. The Ashla screamed overhead, its laser cannons stitching a line of fire between Vader and Johnny, forcing the Sith Lord to leap back. The freighter, a battered VCX-100, settled on the rocks in a cloud of dust and grit, its ramp already lowering. Get in, Ahsoka's voice called from the ship's comm. Johnny Blaze didn't look at Vader again. He sprinted for the ship, the Hellfire returning to his limbs, not as an unstoppable force, but as life-saving fuel. He leapt onto the ramp as it rose, and the freighter shot skyward, its shields glowing as Vader hurled a telekinetic blast of rubble after it. As the ship pierced the cloud layer, Johnny collapsed against a bulkhead, breathing hard, the flames receding once more. He was just a man again, saved from temptation by the enemy of the man who'd tempted him. Ahsoka appeared from the cockpit, her expression unreadable. That was close. Johnny met her gaze. Why? Why come back? Why risk that? Because despair is the Empire's favorite weapon, she said simply. And because you were right about one thing. We do need a reckoning, just not theirs. She offered a hand, not to the spirit of vengeance, to the man. Johnny Blaze took it. The war wasn't over, The doubt wasn't gone, but he was no longer alone on the cliff's edge. He had chosen a side. Not the rebellions, not the Empire's, his own. And somewhere within, Zarathos, the ancient spirit of vengeance, settled. The vessel had been tested and had not broken. The purpose remained. The hunt would continue. But perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to learn a new way to judge. The freighter, which Ahsoka introduced as the Wayfarer, was a symphony of mismatched parts and stubborn functionality. It smelled of ozone, engine grease, and the faint, sharp scent of blaster residue that no amount of cleaning could erase. In the small utilitarian crew quarters, Johnny Blaze sat on a bunk, his head in his hands. The leather jacket felt heavy, a costume for a role he was no longer sure he could play. Ahsoka entered, carrying 2 metal cups of something hot and vaguely stimulant-smelling. She handed one to him and leaned against the doorway. "The drink's terrible, but it's warm." Johnny took it, the heat grounding him. "Thanks. For out there." "You were giving him exactly what he wanted," she said, her tone matter-of-fact, not accusatory. "The dark side feeds on despair. It convinces you that the only way to end suffering is to embrace a greater, more controlled evil. It's a trap that has snared better beings than you or me." "I almost walked into it," Johnny admitted, the shame raw. "The things he showed me, the consequences of what I've done, they were real." "Of course they were." Ahsoka took a sip, her eyes distant. "The Empire is brilliant at using truth as a weapon. They take a real, painful consequence and use it to sell a monstrous lie. Yes, when you destroy a pirate clan, someone worse might move in. That's the reality of a galaxy without a just government. The Empire's solution isn't to be that just government. It's to be the ultimate pirate, demanding obedience at the point of a Death Star." She looked at him directly. "Your power is terrifying, Ghost Rider. It's absolute. An absolute power in a complex universe should give you pause. The fact that it does means you're not a monster. But Vader's answer, the Empire's answer, is to remove that pause, to make you a weapon without a conscience. That's not a solution. It's a surrender." Johnny stared into his cup. "So what's the answer? Just keep burning things down and hope it works out better next time?" "No." Ahsoka's voice was firm. "The answer is to think bigger than the next guilty soul, but not in the way the Emperor wants. You have to start asking why the guilt exists in the first place." "The why is irrelevant." Zarathos' voice grumbled within, but it was a tired protest. The spirit, too, had been shaken by the confrontation. The Sith had not attacked their strength, but their righteousness. It was a novel and disorienting strategy. "Maybe it's the only thing that's relevant," Johnny shot back internally. Aloud, he said, "I'm listening." Ahsoka nodded. "The Hutts are slavers because the Empire turns a blind eye in exchange for bribes and intelligence. The pirate clans thrive in the Outer Rim because the Empire abandons those systems, seeing them as ungovernable. The suffering you see, it's not a series of random crimes. It's an ecosystem. The Empire isn't just a player in it. For the last 2 decades, it's been the architect. It creates the conditions for evil to flourish, then offers itself as the only solution to the chaos it engineered." The pieces began to click into a horrifying, larger picture. Johnny had been treating symptoms, the individual slaver, the pirate captain, the corrupt officer. But the disease was systemic. Palpatine, the Empire, the dark side itself. "So you're saying I should go after the Emperor?" Johnny said, a flicker of the old fire returning to his eyes. "I'm saying that's the heart of the guilt," Ahsoka corrected. "But it's not that simple. The Emperor is protected by more than armies. He's a Sith master, the most powerful Force user in generations. He exists at the center of a web of darkness. Attacking him directly right now would be suicide. And if you fell, who would be left to protect the people your current war leaves vulnerable? The weight of it was crushing. So it's hopeless. Hope isn't about having a simple solution, Ahsoka said, a gentle smile touching her lips. Hope is about refusing to accept that the way things are is the way they must always be. The rebellion isn't just fighting the Empire. We're trying to build the after. We're trying to create a galaxy where spirits of vengeance might actually be able to rest. She placed her cup down. I'm not asking you to join the rebellion. Your moral compass doesn't align with our chain of command. But we could share intelligence. When we identify a target that's both strategically vital to the Empire and a genuine font of suffering, we tell you. You do what you do best, but you do it with the knowledge of what comes next. We can have cells ready to move in, to provide stability, to ensure that when you burn out the corruption, something healthier has a chance to grow. It was a partnership, not subjugation, a recognition that their powers were different, but their ultimate enemy was the same. Johnny felt the ember inside him glow warmer. It wasn't the roaring, destructive inferno of unchecked vengeance. It was a forge fire, a tool for shaping, not just destroying. What's the first target? He asked, his voice quiet but steady. The target was a place called the Kessel's Shadow. Not the infamous spice mines, but a secondary, Imperial-run facility buried in the gaseous veins of a nearby nebula. Officially, it was a high-security penitentiary for the Empire's most dangerous political prisoners. Rebel intelligence, gathered at great cost, revealed its true purpose. It was a laboratory. Here, Imperial scientists and Sith alchemists worked under the direct oversight of a High Inquisitor, experimenting on Force-sensitive prisoners. They sought to break their wills, to twist their connection to the Force, to create new, pliable weapons for the dark side. The suffering there was not a byproduct. It was the primary ingredient. It was the perfect hybrid target. A place of profound, concentrated guilt, and a key strategic asset for the Emperor's long-term plans. The Wayfarer emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the nebula. On the cockpit scanner, the facility was a grim, angular blot against the swirling pink and purple gases. Scans show heavy shielding, automated turbo-laser batteries, and a permanent garrison of purge troopers, Ahsoka said, her fingers dancing over the controls. Standard Imperial patrols every 6 hours. The prisoners are held in the lower levels. The labs are here, in the central spire. Johnny, once again clad in the Ghost Rider's burning form, stared at the image. He could feel it from here, a psychic stench of agony and violated will that made Zarathos growl in anticipation. This is a nest of true evil, the spirit affirmed. The guilt here is not born of greed or cruelty, but of a deliberate perversion of life itself. This is a worthy hunt. We do this together, Johnny thought back. And we do it smart. This isn't just about punishment. It's about stopping the experiment. Ahsoka handed him a small comlink. This is encrypted. I'll be monitoring from here. My job is to handle the Imperial reinforcements when they inevitably come. Your job is to get in, shut it down, and get the prisoners to the extraction point. A rebel strike team will be waiting in transports at Hangar Bay Gamma here. She pointed to a schematic. They'll handle the evacuation. You handle the cleanup. Ghost Rider took the comlink, the Hellfire refusing to damage the device. He gave a single, grim nod. The Hell Cycle launched from the Wayfarer's ventral bay, plunging into the nebula. The colorful gases parted before the Hellfire, creating a temporary tunnel. The facility's sensors detected the anomalous energy signature immediately. Turbo laser batteries swiveled and fired. Ghost Rider didn't dodge. He rode straight into the barrage, the chain whirling around him like a shield. Bolts of green plasma struck the Hellfire links and detonated harmlessly. He was a meteor of purpose, impacting the main hangar bay with a cataclysmic explosion that blew the massive doors inward. Purge troopers, elite soldiers trained to fight Force users, were waiting. They fired not blasters, but sonic projectors and ion grenades. The air filled with disorienting waves of sound and crackling energy. The tactics had evolved again. They weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to contain, to disable, to capture. The Emperor still wanted his prize. Ghost Rider adapted. He leapt from the Hell Cycle, letting it ride on autonomously, a flaming distraction. He moved through the troopers with brutal efficiency, his chain-breaking armor, his fists shattering weapons. But he used the penance stare sparingly, only on the officers, the ones whose minds held the secrets of this place. From them, in flashes, he gleaned the layout, the security codes, the location of the head scientist, a Twi'lek Sith acolyte named Zor. He fought his way deeper, a one-being siege. Alarms blared. Containment fields activated, but Hellfire burned through them. He was a force of nature, but a focused one. He bypassed non-essential areas, heading straight for the central spire. Finally, he burst into the main laboratory. It was a chamber of horrors. Stasis tanks held broken, floating forms. Machines pulsed with stolen Force energy. In the center, standing over a convulsing human prisoner strapped to a table, was Zor. The Twi'lek's red eyes widened, not in fear, but in fanatical curiosity. "The specimen," Zor breathed, ignoring the troopers falling behind Ghost Rider. "The Emperor will reward me beyond measure for your delivery." "You will reward no one," Ghost Rider intoned, advancing. The troopers in the room fired. Their bolts were absorbed by the lingering dark side energy in the room, making the rider's flames burn a sickly green for a moment. Zor ignited a lightsaber with a curved hilt. "You think your primitive fire can compare to the refined power of the dark side?" He gestured, and the machinery in the room surged. Tendrils of stolen Force energy, tainted and screaming, lashed out at Ghost Rider. This was different. This wasn't the pure, impersonal energy of the Force Vader wielded. This was pain given form. And pain. Pain was something Zarathos understood intimately. The Hellfire didn't resist the dark tendrils, it consumed them. The stolen agony of 100 prisoners became fuel, making Ghost Rider burn brighter, hotter, more fiercely than ever before. The spirit of vengeance was feasting on the very substance of the crime. Zor's confidence shattered. He stumbled back. "Impossible." "Look into my eyes," Ghost Rider commanded, his voice the final judgment of 1,000 dead voices. "See the suffering you have authored. Feel every scream, every broken mind, every stolen life." The penitent stare took Zor. But because the stare showed the victim their crimes from the victim's perspective, and Zor's crimes were the deliberate infliction of metaphysical and psychological torment, the feedback was instantaneous and catastrophic. The Twi'lek's mind, already steeped in darkness, imploded. He didn't just collapse. He dissolved into a wisp of screaming smoke that was sucked into Ghost Rider's flames, forever adding his own guilt to the spirit's furnace. The laboratory went dark, the machines overloading and dying. On the comlink, Ahsoka's voice came through, strained. "Rider, Imperial reinforcements have arrived. A full task force. I'm engaging, but you have 5 minutes until they overwhelm this position. Get those prisoners out now." Ghost Rider turned from the ashes of Zor. He moved to the control console, his burning fingers inputting the codes ripped from the officers' minds. Prison doors hissed open. Force-suppressing collars deactivated. He stood at the entrance to the prison block as beings of various species, emaciated, terrified, but with a flicker of defiant light still in their eyes, stumbled out. He pointed a flaming hand down the corridor. "That way, to the hangar. Your freedom is waiting. Run!" They ran. Ghost Rider turned back the way he came. The Emperor's forces were here. The cleanup wasn't finished. He had made a choice on Nal Hutta. He had forged a tentative alliance in the Wayfarer. Now, on the edge of the nebula, he would define what that meant. He was not the Empire's weapon. He was not the Rebellion's soldier. He was the fire that would cleanse their battlefields. The Hell Cycle answered his call, smashing through a wall to meet him. He mounted it, and together, rider and steed, they rode out to face the Imperial fleet, not to destroy it, but to buy time, to protect the innocent, to be, for the first time, not just vengeance, but a shield. The hunt had evolved. The Imperial task force was a hammer meant to crush a single, burning nail. A victory Two-class Star Destroyer, the Iron Fist, dominated the space before the nebula, its dagger-like shape surrounded by a screen of TIE fighters and two Architans-class light cruisers. Their orders were explicit from Coruscant. Capture the anomaly. Disable its vessel. Use ion cannons, gravity wells, and overwhelming force. The Emperor wanted the spirit of vengeance in a cage. Ghost Rider saw none of this through the eyes of a tactician. He saw it through the lens of Zarathos's ancient purpose, now refracted through Johnny Blaze's newfound resolve. The fleet was not just an obstacle, it was a concentration of guilt. The captains who ordered bombardments of civilian centers. The gunners who fired on escaping life pods. The system that turned ordinary men into cogs of a tyrannical machine. But his mission was not their judgment. Not yet. His mission was time. The Hell Cycle shot from the prison facility's ruined hangar, a tiny, impossible flare against the massive Star Destroyer. TIE fighters swarmed, their twin ion engines screaming in the airless void. Green laser fire crisscrossed the darkness. "They are insects," Zarathos snarled, eager to swat them from the sky. "They're a distraction," Johnny countered, weaving through the barrage. "The Star Destroyer is the threat. It has the tractor beams, the heavy ion cannons. It can stop the transports." The compromise was swift and violent. Ghost Rider didn't attack the TIEs directly. He led them. He became a flaming lure, drawing the fighter screen away from the nebula's edge, where unseen, 3 battered GR-75 medium transports emerged, hugging the gaseous clouds. Ahsoka's Wayfarer flew cover, its laser cannons picking off TIEs that strayed too close to the evacuation. "Rider, the Iron Fist is powering its main tractor beam projector," Ahsoka's voice crackled over the comlink. "Target is the lead transport. If they lock on..." Ghost Rider didn't respond. He gunned the Hell Cycle, pointing its nose at the Star Destroyer's looming belly. He rode a river of Hellfire straight for the massive ship. On the bridge of the Iron Fist, Captain Hoylu watched the sensor display with a mixture of awe and professional disdain. Single entity, approaching at attack speed. No life signs. Energy signature matches prior reports. All batteries, concentrate fire. Ion cannons only. I want it stunned, not dust. A coordinated volley of blue ion bolts, each capable of disabling a capital ship's systems, lanced out. Ghost Rider didn't try to evade. He wrapped his chain around himself, spinning it into a vortex. The ion bolts struck the whirling Hellfire and did not discharge. Instead, they were absorbed, their energy converted, making the rider blaze with an electric blue corona within the orange flame. He was using their own disabling weaponry as a booster. He shot past the final defensive line and impacted the Star Destroyer's hull, not with an explosion, but with an eruption. Hellfire spread across the durasteel plates, not burning through, but seeping into seams, conduits, and sensor arrays. It was a corruption, a supernatural virus. Systems across the ship flickered. The targeting computer for the tractor beam glitched, swinging wildly. "Report," Captain Hoylu barked. "Sir, localized power failures on decks 7 through 12. External sensors are malfunctioning. The entity, it's on the hull. It's moving toward the main projector. Send out purge troopers in mag boots. Now!" But Ghost Rider was already there. He stood before the enormous dish of the tractor beam projector, a small figure of bone and fire before a piece of technology designed to capture starships. He placed his hands on the housing. This was not an act of brute force, but of will. Zarathos reached out with the essence of vengeance, the concept of being trapped, of freedom denied, of justice withheld. He poured that essence into the machine. The projector didn't break. It screamed. A feedback shriek of tortured energy echoed through the force. Circuits overloaded. The entire array melted inward, not from heat, but from a kind of spiritual decay. One of the Arquitens-class cruisers, seeing the Star Destroyer's distress, moved to intercept the fleeing transports. Ghost Rider saw it pivot, its turbo lasers charging. He leapt from the Iron Fist's hull, the Hell Cycle flying to meet him in the void. Together, they aimed for the cruiser's bridge. He didn't need to destroy it. He just needed to blind it. He passed through the bridge viewport as he had on Yavin Prime. The command crew turned, weapons raised. They saw a skeleton wreathed in the stolen, crackling energy of their own ion cannons. They felt not fear of death, but the crushing weight of accountability. Ghost Rider didn't use the full penance stare. He gave them a glimpse, a flash of every civilian transport they had ever fired upon, every surrendered vessel they had destroyed under orders. It was a fractional, focused burst of judgment. The crew collapsed, retching, weeping, their operational will shattered. The cruiser drifted, harmless. The third transport slipped into hyperspace. Then the second. The TIE fighters, leaderless and confused, began to break off. The Iron Fist, its primary weapon destroyed, and its crew rattled by the supernatural assault, held position. The cost of continuing was too high. The final transport, carrying the most critically injured prisoners, lingered at the jump point, its hyperdrive cycling slowly. The Iron Fist's secondary batteries locked on. Ghost Rider saw it. The Hell Cycle was far away, dealing with the last of the ties. He was floating, exposed, near the derelict cruiser. He had no vehicle, no purchase, only his will. For the first time, he didn't think of punishment. He thought of protection. He thought of the faces of the prisoners he'd freed. He stretched out a hand toward the distant transport. Not with the Force, but with the fundamental law he embodied. The law that demanded the guilty be punished and the innocent be spared. He focused every ounce of his being, every ounce of Zarathos's ancient power, into a single, silent command directed at the universe itself. No. A wave of hellfire, silent and impossibly vast, erupted from him. It didn't travel. It simply was, appearing between the transport and the Star Destroyer like a sudden, flaming wall the size of a continent. The Imperial batteries fired. Their bolts hit the wall of fire and vanished. On the bridge of the Iron Fist, Captain Hoylu stared at the impossible specter, a wall of flame in the vacuum of space, holding back his guns. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. This was not a fight he could win with turbolasers. This was something else. "Cease fire," he whispered, then louder. "All batteries, cease fire. Disengage." The wall of hellfire dissipated. The final transport's hyperdrive activated, and it streaked into the safety of light speed. Ghost Rider, The hellfire around him now dimmed to a flicker, hung in the silent darkness. The effort had cost him. Not in power, Zarathos was eternal, but in focus. The deliberate, precise application of vengeance as a shield was a new muscle, and it ached. The Wayfarer slid alongside him, its dorsal hatch opening. Ahsoka stood at the controls, her expression unreadable. She extended a hand with the Force, creating a bubble of stable atmosphere, and pulled him inside. The hatch closed. The freighter turned and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the crippled Imperial task force behind. In the quiet of the Wayfarer's hold, the flames died completely. Johnny Blaze sat on the deck plating, breathing heavily. Ahsoka approached, holding out a canteen of water. "You saved them all," she said. We did," Johnny corrected, his voice hoarse. "That was the plan." "The plan didn't include creating a force barrier in deep space," Ahsoka said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "You're learning." Johnny took a long drink. "He's learning too," he said, tapping his chest. "The spirit. It's not just about the punishment anymore. It saw purpose, a reason to protect, not just destroy." Ahsoka nodded. "That's how you beat them. Not by matching their darkness, but by proving your light is more adaptable, more resilient." She sat across from him. "The prisoners are safe. The experiment is destroyed. The Empire knows we can hit them, even in their most secret places. This is a victory. And the Emperor? He knows something new now too," Ahsoka said, her face growing serious. "He knows you can't be tempted by empty order. He knows you can't be crushed by brute force. And he knows you're not acting alone anymore. That makes you more dangerous to him than ever before." Johnny looked at his hands. Ordinary human hands, for now. "What happens next?" "That's up to you," Ahsoka said. "The offer stands. Intelligence sharing, targeted strikes. You ride your path, we'll ride ours. When they intersect, we'll be stronger for it." Johnny thought of the galaxy, the endless suffering, the systemic guilt, the tiny pockets of light. He thought of the crushing despair on Nalhuta and the defiant hope in the eyes of the freed prisoners. He was a weapon, yes, but perhaps a weapon could choose what to cut down and what to defend. "All right," he said. "We have a deal." Somewhere within, Zarathos, the spirit of vengeance, settled. The hunt continued, but the quarry had expanded. It would hunt the guilty, yes, but it would also guard the innocent. It would be the flame that purified and the fire that warmed. It had found, in this strange, war-torn galaxy, not just a hunting ground, but a cause. And for a spirit of vengeance, a cause was everything. The legend of the burning ghost, fragmented and multiplied. In the dim cantinas of the Outer Rim, it remained a horror story, a spectral judge who would find you if your sins were dark enough. In the encrypted briefings of the Rebel Alliance, it was codenamed Phantom Justice, an unpredictable but potent ally in the Shadow War. And in the highest towers of Imperial power, it was reassessed. No longer merely an anomaly to be captured, it was reclassified. Extra-normal Entity 01, Rider. A persistent, strategic threat. Darth Vader filed his report, acknowledging the failure of corruption. The Emperor, in his infinite patience, simply ordered the files archived. The spirit of vengeance had proven resistant to both force and philosophy. Very well. The dark side would simply wait. All things, even eternal spirits, grew weary. And in weariness, new vulnerabilities emerged. But for now, the rider was free. Johnny Blaze and Zarathos, host and spirit, had forged a new understanding. Their vengeance would no longer be a wildfire, scorching everything in its path. It would be a surgical flame, cutting out corruption with the Rebel Alliance's intelligence as its scalpel, and leaving room for hope to grow in the cleansed wound. The Hell Cycle rides the stellar winds, its path uncharted, but its purpose clearer than ever. It is drawn to guilt, but it is also drawn to cries for help. The Galactic Empire, with its oceans of sin, remains its ultimate target. But the battle will be fought one heart, one prison, one soul at a time. The spirit of vengeance has invaded the Star Wars galaxy, and it is not leaving. It has found its eternal hunt. And in a universe plagued by darkness, sometimes the only answer is a fire that burns all the way down to the bone. A fire that can punish the wicked, and in its hottest heart, protect the innocent. The legend is just beginning. And somewhere, in the vast dark between stars, a Hellfire engine roars, a chain rattles, and the guilty tremble.